Okay, so welcome and Happy New Year. And the first order of business is going to be the roll call.
Okay, when I call your name, say here. And if you don't, then I'll know you're not. Representative Adams.
Here.
Bauer.
Here.
Bordelon.
Here.
Brayman. Casper.
Here.
Chase.
Here.
Sini.
Here.
Doyle.
Here.
Frickman.
Here.
Gustafson.
Here.
Hanscom.
Here.
Katowski.
Here.
Marley. I know he's here.
I know he's here too.
Where is he? Okay, he's not here right now. Marshall.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Massett.
Here.
McDermott. Melendez.
Here.
Mello Miller.
Here.
Merritt.
Here.
Monhan.
Here.
Newsom.
Here.
Oliver.
Here.
Pasqualini.
Here.
Perry.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Richards.
Here.
Rogers. Stanford.
Here.
Streeter Irma. Streeter James.
Here.
Strode.
Here.
Thompson. Wagner.
Here.
Washington.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Whitehouse.
Here.
Whitney.
Here.
Ebbin.
Here.
Did Representative Marley enter? No? Okay.
No.
All right, so at call, we have 34 members present.
So we have a quorum. Let's have a moment of silence and salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next order of business is to approve the minutes from our December 13th, 2017 meeting. Is there a motion? Representative Massett?
I so move. Second.
Powers?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is citizens' petitions. And this is the portion of the RTM agenda where the RTM welcomes comments from citizens. Each presentation should be limited to 10 minutes or less, and citizens should, if possible, submit written comments. Presentations should be limited to matters pertinent to Groton. The moderator or members through the moderator shall ask questions only in order to clarify the speaker's presentation. Responses may be given by the moderator and/or by the town manager. Citizens should make their presentations from the lectern and state their names and addresses for the record. So I think we have one person. I'll ask Jean-Claude Amboise to come to the mic, and please state your name and address for the record. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Jean-Claude Amboise. I live at 169 Shenecosset Parkway in Groton. I come here for two reasons tonight. Happy New Year to all of you newly elected members. I wasn't able to make your first meeting. Congratulations on your election. My main point of coming here is to speak to the citizens of Groton as well as the RTM members regarding petitioners that are going around Groton seeking signatures so that they can have a a referendum on the Charter Revision Commission in November. I am 110,000% against this measure. They do have the right to have a petition be signed. However, they're being very deceptive and disingenuous on what they are asking the public. A great example, I was in front of Aldi's the other day, and one of the petitioners came up to an individual and said, "Here, do you want to have the right to vote? Sign the petition." And that's all the information that they're giving them. And unfortunately, these petitioners are being very opportunistic on a vulnerable public. It is freezing cold outside. and you're right in front of a storefront, and this individual comes at you with a petition to sign, what are you going to do? Most people are going to say, I'm going to sign it. I'm going to sign this.
He has
And-
10 minutes. Please sit down. Thanks.
I'm going to sign this thing.
Order. This has no business in front of this.
This is pertinent to Groton.
body.
Sure it does. It's pertinent to Groton. I'm allowing
And it's
it.
actually pertinent to this body because the people that are signing this petition and want them to sign the petition are trying to eliminate this body. This is the body that represents all the entire town. And what they want to do is they want to eliminate these 41 positions and they want to replace it with 7. 7 that don't have the power that you have right now. And unfortunately, what's going to happen if that does go through is they're going to disenfranchise a huge amount of voters in this town. So going back to my point, individual was approached, older woman. Yeah, sure, I'll sign. I'm cold. I'm signing, I'll move on. So as I walked into the Aldi's with her, I told her, do you know what you just signed? She's like, yeah, I signed for my right to vote. And I had to tell her, I'm like, you know you voted on November 7th, right? You voted for town councilors, you voted for Board of Ed, you voted for RTM members. And those RTM members are the ones that are looking over the finances, doing the hard work, regardless of what other people may say, and they are doing the work for the people, okay? And if you don't like that, you vote them out the next year. If they're not showing up to a meeting, you vote them out next year. And unfortunately, they're saying 19,000 people have the right to vote. Well, that's 100% accurate. However, they're going out and seeking petitions for 10% of the voting population. Their own report does not require a minimum voter turnout. So all you have to do is have one more person to vote in favor or against the budget, and that budget either passes or fails. If it fails, we spent $22,000+ on a referendum, and then we have to go back at it in 3 weeks and spend another $22,000. Okay, so again, the deceptiveness of what they are telling the population is inaccurate. And once I was done speaking to this woman and giving her the full details of what they were trying to do, she went back and asked to take her signature off of the petition. So, for the next 2 days, any Groton citizen that's out there, if you are approached at Stop and Shop or any other place where an individual is asking you for a petition, I will highly recommend that you say no thank you. Okay, because we don't have to go through this process again for the next 11 months trying to say and tell people over and over again that the RTM is this body that's here for you, representing your best interest. They can be called, they can be emailed, you can come in and talk just like I am right now and do that same thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so that is the only citizen on the petition. I have a few announcements to make. Representative Irma Streeter, Thompson, Brayman, and McDermott are not available to make it to the meeting tonight, so they're excused. I had another item I wanted to mention, which is I am looking for liaisons, probably 2 liaisons to the Board of Ed, a liaison to the Town Council, a liaison to the Economic Development Commission, and a liaison to the Golf Advisory Board. If you're interested in any of these positions, please contact me offline. We don't have to do it now, but I would like to appoint probably 2 people to the town council, but if there's 2 people to the other ones, we only need 1. But if you're interested in attending those meetings and reporting back to the RTM to let us know what happened and what transpired, that would be great. So thank you. Nothing else? Okay, and then we do have one referral I'm going to read. We were referred from the town council 2017-0301. A resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation to the Board of Education. Whereas the Board of Education FYE 2018 appropriation was reduced due to proposed cuts to the state education cost-sharing grant, and whereas Groton was designated as an alliance district by the State Department of Education as of July 1st, 2017, and this designation continues for 5 years to FYE 2022. And whereas an alliance district designation requires that education funding cannot be reduced for fiscal years ending June 20th, 2018 and June 30th, 2019. And whereas the Connecticut State Department of Education has determined the 2017 to 2018 minimum budget requirement MBR calculation is the FYE 2017 budgeted appropriation of $76,468,239,000. Now therefore, be it resolved that $1,568,239 is appropriated from the general fund, unassigned fund, from the general fund unassigned fund balance to the Board of Education Function 1080 to meet the minimum budget requirement and referred to the RTM for approval. I'd like to refer this to the Education Committee and have them report back at our February meeting on this. So thank you. All right. So I just also want to say I did assign everyone to a committee. I did try to get everyone on their first choice of committee, and I also did try to, so not everyone may have got on it. I did limit most people to one committee. There are a few cases where people are on two committees. There are minority membership requirements on our committees, and so this made it a little difficult because of the makeup of our RTM at this moment. So if you find yourself on a committee that you're, really don't prefer to be on, you can come see me and I will try to change it. But in general, I think you should all be pleased. So I hope that's going well. And I just want to stress that, you've been assigned to this committee. They really need to have quorum at these committees, and so I urge you to attend the meetings when they're called, okay? So thank you. Now we're going to hear the report of the town manager.
Good evening. Going over the financial statement first, the general fund preliminary fund balance as of June 30th, 2017 is approximately $10.9 million. That's 9.1% of the fiscal year end 2018 general fund adopted budget. The general fund contingency budget for FYE 2018, the current balance is $344,376 as of December 31st. And then the capital reserve fund balance as of December 31st is $1.2 million. Everybody should have a copy of my packet. I'm not going to read everything in there. If you don't have it, it's over on the table. But a few things to point out: everybody's been following the a lot of people have been following the Mystic Education Center sale that we're soliciting proposals for. Those are due in the next couple of days, so it'll be exciting in the next month or so. Just to I guess it's February 15th, so it's got about 2 more weeks, few more weeks. So I was thinking, sorry, it was right now, but it's about another month. But then, so it's coming up soon, and then we'll know how that's all going to turn out. I know that they're getting a lot of interest in it. Paige is taking a group through tomorrow, and so hopefully we'll get some exciting proposals from that. At our January 23rd COW, we're going to have a couple interesting things. The audit will be presented there, so if you have any interest, please feel free to attend the COW. And then we'll have a presentation on the tax increment financing, which is an important piece of the economic development tool set that we want to get put in place. That'll be on the 23rd. Hopefully action soon to follow to adopt that. So it'll be a big meeting on the 23rd. So that's all I have.
Well, thank you. Could we have the report on economic development? If there is
No
one?
here tonight. They'll be here at the next meeting.
Oh, okay. Representative Massett?
Madam Moderator, this is a question for the town manager. Could you explain what a TIF district is?
Sure, the tax incrementing finance district. Essentially, it allows a developer to develop a piece of property and then use their, it's sort of like collateral, the tax increase above what it has been. Those taxes can be used to then sent back to them and used to pay off any loans for that development. You'd use it in an instance where that development wouldn't happen without that project, without that tool. But it's used. It's pretty new here in Connecticut. It's used heavily in a lot of other states where I came from. We used it. I used it a handful of times. For one thing, we had a old city dump that we used it to. Someone bought it and used that mechanism to clean it up, and then their taxes went to pay off the loan for it. So it's a very handy tool. But the 23rd, we're going to have the consultants come in and do a full presentation on it. And if you're interested at all, please come to that meeting. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, can we hear from the report of the Superintendent of Schools next?
I've got some.
Yeah.
Well, good evening. I wanted to report on a few things that have occurred since we last spoke. One is we got some really terrific news. If you remember last time, I said that while Groton had been designated as an alliance district, actually we have to meet the requirements of the alliance district, which is a lot of reporting and remedial services and that sort of thing. But I think because of a legislative oversight, which I have spoken to our legislators about, Groton received no money. So the State Department really was alarmed with that because there are a lot of requirements that we're going to have to meet. So the State Department for this year and this year only has allocated $600,000 for those services. And we're in the process of putting a budget together. But I went on on Monday to meet with the Alliance office, and they made it very clear, number one, the money is going to go away in June. It is not a legislative appropriation. I can tell you that a district of our size, almost exactly Middletown, gets a $3 million supplement. They call it a set-aside to support over the next 5 years the remedial services and so forth that would be required. So I don't know what the situation will be in June, but I'll keep you abreast of that. But I've now spoken to Representatives Conley De La Cruz and Senator Summers, and they all understand exactly what it was. They actually added 3 districts. Torrington, Thompson, and Groton, and Torrington got a full grant also. So there are now 33 alliance districts, 31 of them have grants, and 2 of them don't. So we're going to try to relieve that situation. The second thing is Groton 2020. The plan is moving ahead extremely well. I mentioned that we're working with the architects. We have pretty much finished the pre-design phase, and we actually, next Tuesday, I will go to Hartford and meet with the Department of Administrative Services. Now we're getting down to actual square footage and what will be reimbursed and that sort of thing. But we did open up, we had an advisory committee, about 30 people came and gave us their input on the design, which is really coming along. I think it's going to be a really beautiful building. Probably in a month or so, perhaps we'll have an architect's rendering. We're not quite at that point yet, but we have all our classrooms and all the other instructional spaces identified. We also, I mentioned, we applied for and got a federal grant that is called the Expect Grant. It's a $4 million grant that will help us to expand. The point of the grant is to expand magnet schools. So Westside will become a STEM magnet school. Cutler will become an arts and humanities magnet school, and both middle schools will become in the International Baccalaureate World Middle Years program. So we were sort of pushed by a very tight timeline by the federal education. It's federal education money. We submitted the budget, and we're off and running. We've hired coordinators, and we're now putting those programs together. In terms of the education cost sharing grant, the ECS, I was concerned that Groton, although we were identified as an alliance district, hadn't actually gotten all its money that was supposed to, because when you're an alliance district, you actually get the same amount of education cost sharing as as you did last year, but the governor actually reduced it by 141,000. So instead of getting 25 million, we would get, as you see here, 24,898,96. So it is at least to the budget, I think has been made clear. It is about $5 million more than was projected in June for the revenue. So that part is a blessing. And the town has actually received a quarter of that amount. In October, they only received a quarter of the diminished amount. So now I know they've gotten the full quarter. This month, they'll get fully half of the $24.9 million, and then in March, they get the remainder. And then the MBR, and I actually have a question, if I could. The town council voted to appropriate the money to bring us back to the minimum budget, which would be to restore the budget to 0%. My question, if I may, Syma, would action be taken? I know you referred it to the Education Committee, but would action be taken at the February meeting?
So they would report out, and
They
that would be
They
the
could
soonest that action could be taken.
Okay. I'm, of course, concerned because of the 1.5 million, we have a lot of remedial services tied up in that. And so I'm anxious, of course, to get those funds. We're not going to proceed to hire people or buy software and so forth until we actually have the money, because that would be irresponsible. So as soon as, obviously, as soon as we could get those funds, we've actually interviewed and identified the persons that we want to hire. And I erroneously thought the action was going to be tonight. So
we can suspend the rules if it's the prerogative of the RTM to do that, as we did at the
Well,
last meeting.
let me explain my sense of urgency then. We sent about 80 extra children to Charles Barnum School. By moving some programs around, we actually identified 4 classrooms, essentially, for those 80 children. But what we did not do is expand their special education staff. And so there are some special ed teachers that have quite a large caseload. And one of the measures is to hire a special ed teacher, which we've identified. The other is that at both middle schools, we only have 1 literacy specialist and 1 math specialist serving both schools, and we'd really like to have 1 at each school. We had 1 at each school, but because of the cut, we reduced that. So there are a number of there's some software, brain pop, and some software that the teachers are really eager to get their hands on. At least as of yesterday, I was implored, and I said, well, look, I think the RTM is going to take action in February, so we'll have to wait. Unfortunately, that's 18% more of the year that we miss. So if there is anything that could be done, I would certainly appreciate that. But anyway, that's the end of my report.
Thank
I'd be
you.
happy to answer questions.
Okay, let's see. Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can you give us tell us some more information about this Alliance District? How did we qualify for that? How did we apply for that? How did we get into that?
Next time I come, I could probably give a much better PowerPoint presentation, but the short answer now, I know because I've been to Hartford, is that it's all based on what they call the District Accountability Index. And there are 8 measures to the Accountability Index, including the language arts scores for all students, and separately the language arts scores for what they call high-need students. High-need students are children who receive free and reduced lunch, or are English language learners, or are special education students. We have a very large, relatively speaking, I think the answer to your question gets to, we have 44% of our children get free and reduced lunch. So that places us in a relatively high needs district. So we have a lot of high needs students. So it's high needs language arts and regular language arts, high needs math and regular math. The 4-year graduation rate, the 6-year graduation rate, attendance, chronic absenteeism, actually students who have more than 10 absences in a year, that we didn't do so hot on that. We have about 15% of the kids who have 10 or more. So what they say, so those are the indicators. So if I enumerated 8 of them, but I can get that to you. And based upon that, they rank order the districts. And we actually landed number 35. Number 34 was Norwich Free Academy, but they're a semi-autonomous institution, so they can't be a priority district, a Alliance district. And then the second one down from us was Preston, but Preston is too small. So we came in number 35 and on our accountability index. So we will stay for 4 years trying to actually monthly being assessed on those measures. It's a real effort by the state. It's very impressive. It's a real effort by the state to help primarily on all student measures. We were fine, well above the state average, but our high needs students, but I will point this out. Some districts are on it because of one school did poorly. We are not in that category. We are simply a district that the average scores, I'm probably telling you more than you need to know. It's a bit complicated, but I think as we proceed through this, I'll be able to get you the 8 indicators. I think that's the easiest. I haven't even explained this to the board yet. I literally just met with the office on Monday.
Did you have a follow-up question, Representative Newsom?
Yes, ma'am.
Follow-up then.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So does this mean that we're doing worse than we did last year? Or
I'm
the year
sorry,
before?
I missed the first words.
Does this mean that we're actually going down from last year or the year before?
No,
Or is this something-
we actually went up, but because I added 3 school districts, our scores went up. But to tell you the truth, I don't know what our score was on chronic absenteeism. We could have. I literally got a 1 sheet of paper. This is the 15, it's all based on 15, 16. It's not based on last year, it's based on the year before that. But those are reasonable questions, and that's the data that I have to analyze, which we literally haven't gotten yet.
And when you say that we have to go back to last year's spending level, at least 0%, so that's the level, doesn't take into account whether or not the number of pupils have gone down, or
That's right.
we've closed the school or anything like that.
For Alliance districts, that's true.
So for Alliance districts, it's got to be last year's number at least.
Correct.
Thank you.
Representative Katowski?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Graner, I have a question, and okay. I'm trying to follow along. You stated that the Board of Ed has $5 million more.
No, not the Board of Ed, the town.
The town has $5 million.
Well, the town has set aside in the May budget $20 million projected revenue for ECS. They just got $25 million.
Okay, so that
Well,
means.
Mr. Burt can answer that question.
Okay, wait.
Okay.
Okay, the $76,468,238 million,
Yes?
does that include the extra $5 million in there?
No.
So you're spending $5 million on top of that?
No. Okay. You're not the only one. This is what happens. And John will give you maybe a shorter version, but we have a budget of about $120 million, right? fair to say? Of the 120 million, about 75, 76 million is education. What the state says is, I'm going to give you money based upon the needs of the district. Some districts get a lot of money, and some districts get a medium amount of money. So what the state does, in round numbers, for the $75 million of education, they give the town of Groton, at least they gave the town of Groton until this year, 25 million, which paid for a third of the education. So the third of the education went on their way. Now, what they did last May, as you know, even as late as this fall, they said that Groton was far wealthier than it appeared. And so instead of getting 25 million, the governor's projection was they were going to cut 9 billion. It was then at another point they were going to cut 17 million. It was sort of crazy. So what the town council did last year is said, are we going to get 25 million? In other words, are we going to get a third of the education budget again? And they said no. They guessed. And they said, we're probably going to get 20 million. So then the budget went in with the tax bills, figuring we're going to have $20 million in education cost sharing grant.
And then $5 million in reduction somewhere.
They projected a $5 million reduction in revenue. So then the school budget was brought down from 76.5 in round numbers to 74.9, figuring that, you know, there would be this big cut. And so the town took cuts there and took cuts other places, and you know, sort of gritted their teeth, figuring we're going to have only $20 million of this revenue. So then when the Alliance District was announced, the town went from 20 million, which is what it thought it had in June, to 25 million is what it has today. And that 5 million, two things happened to that 5 million. It's 5 million of revenue, not expenditure. So the town council knew that they had to make the board budget whole, which would mean to give the restore about 1.5 million of the 5 million, which meant 3.5 million was left on the table. And what the town council did, I think, is put it in the reserve fund, if I'm not mistaken. So the 5 million that the town got in the last month, 3.5 of it went to the reserve, and 1.5, please God, will go back to the board.
And that's the Alliance money? No?
No.
Okay.
That is
okay,
education
okay.
cost-sharing grant money. Has
So-
nothing to do.
Okay,
There's no.
so if that's in the 76,468,000, that 1.5 million that.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. So on top of that, we got 1.57 million for Alliance money.
I wish.
No.
No. Until Monday, I thought we got nothing. What we did get was the $5 million. So I was psyched for Groton, because Groton got $5 million. 3.5 went to the reserve fund. 1.5 would go to restore the budget. Beyond that, they did say, you know, you have to do all this stuff, all this remedial stuff. So they gave us, but just for 1 year, $600,000 that will pay for the remedial services.
One more question.
Okay.
Now, is the $4 million grant on top of all this that you explained that you got for the middle
Oh,
school?
yes. That's federal education, and that goes 100% to the middle schools to make magnets.
So does that mean, so basically that means this year the Board of Ed is going to be spending $80 million, $468,239.
There are other grants too. They'll spend more than that. We get money to pay for our special education program. You know, the grants, don't get too excited about the grants, because we spend about $22 million on our special ed program, and we get $1 million from the federal government. You know, there was a time when the federal education department or the federal government said they would pay for 50% of the special education. Well, if we got $11 million from the federal education, then that would be okay. But yeah, there are other grants. And there are other grants, by the way, that the town gets. The town gets about $3.5 million from the impact aid, which comes from the Federal Education Department for the children, the military children, and not only the military children, but primarily the military children. So that's called the impact aid. So if you look at the town's budget, there's a bunch of revenue features. ECS, of course, is the biggest. But there are others, like the $3.5 million that comes from the impact aid. All of that, by the way, sorry?
That's not in your budget.
No, it's not in the board's budget.
Got it.
It's in the town's revenue, because it all goes to the town. Some of you are looking askance at that. All that money goes to the town because the town gives us $76 million to run the schools. So all the grants come in and they go to the town, and the town puts all that together.
Thank you.
Thanks for those questions. It's taken me 4 years to figure all this out.
Representative Whitehouse, did you have another question?
Yes. So I have two questions. The first one's pretty short. I just want to ask a clarifying question about the Alliance District, because I want to make sure there's not misunderstanding. Someone hearing that quickly might think that that means that we are one of the bottom 33 districts in the state, which, were I someone looking for a place to buy a house or move to,
Right.
would make Groton right off my list. So could you clarify that if the Alliance District actually means we're one of the 33 worst school districts in the state, or if it's something different?
Well, it does mean, to be honest, our district performance index, I mean, technically it's in the bottom 35, but those 35, there are other categories. Like, for example, there are priority districts and there are network districts. So the real story is there are gradations to that. The districts that are one higher, our index is 73.2. If you have 73.3, and there are, I'd rather not name them, in this area, there are a few districts that are 73.4, but they didn't get a nickel. So part of me says for $5 million, you know, we'll take the help and give that to the children, and it will stay for 5 years, regardless of how well we do in the next year or two.
Okay. And the other question I had about the minimum budget requirement is, as I perceive this, it's something we need to do, whether we do it in January or February. But if we do it in February, then a month goes by with children not getting remedial help and
Precisely.
services not being bought. And if we do it in January, then children get help sooner and the department can do things sooner. Is that correct?
We would hire people tomorrow.
Thank you.
Well,
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Looking at the numbers after the last meeting, we talked about how we were an alliance district and how you found out in July, and yet we still
I didn't find
have.
out in July
Can I
because
finish?
there wasn't
May I
any
finish?
alliance districts in July.
Right, you
Well,
were
you're
finding
wrong.
out.
There was no
Right, but
alliance districts in
can I
July.
finish? I didn't get to
The
be
program had
finished.
expired.
You were saying that you found out, and that then you told us in December. With that, you were going to come back and speak to us and let us know what were the indications as why we were an alliance district. After several meetings that I've attended, you've stated several times that the reasons that we might be in the alliance district was pockets of poverty. After speaking with several people in the community, including myself, my thoughts on that, at 2 different meetings you said this, I'd like to know what you mean by these pockets of poverty, because that's kind of offensive. The pockets of
high-needs
okay,
children,
the pockets of
defined
poverty,
by the state.
the pockets of poverty that have been in this
Well,
town.
the pockets of poverty
May I
are-
finish?
are
Can I
free and
please?
reduced
Can I
children,
please
44%.
state?
Okay.
You asked a
Let's-
question.
Superintendent Graner, just allow
Finish?
Representative Bordelon to finish your question, please. Thank
The
you.
pockets of poverty that you speak of have always been here in Groton.
Right.
And with that being said, we still have been able to educate our children without any problems. So I just wanted to point that out. The pockets of poverty that he speaks of and this high number of free or reduced lunch, which are our high-needs children, I find to be quite offensive. Just because you are designated as being needing services for free or reduced lunch in this town doesn't mean that your children necessarily are high needs, and that they actually are not performing above grade level in some areas. But with that being said, let me finish. I have major concerns with how it's being addressed. As I want my children to be educated here, even though I have major concerns about how the money is being allocated in this district and where the money is going and being used to actually educate our children, not the fluffy top end. So my concerns are, we talk about, and you spoke about at several meetings, because I attend a majority, 95% of the Board of Ed meetings. You speak of one of the reasons possibly being part of an alliance district is that we need to increase that high needs group needs support. But yet, consistently in this district, anytime there's a cut from the state or anywhere in the town, we constantly are cutting our remedial support to those high need, might as well just say it, low income children that need the most support, yet you keep cutting those funds. So my concern is, you speak tonight and say it would be a great idea to vote on this and move this forward, but you don't bring any examples as to exactly why we're an alliance district, which I think is out there if they're giving you 600 already. So the reason that we are in the alliance district must already be designated. So my concerns are, as I want this money to come, this district was okay with the money not being allocated, and we talk about the urgency of our students in this district, and I've been at many meetings in this town, time and time again, advocating for the population of students that are not receiving the support. One remedial support teacher floating between Cutler and Westside, Westside being a Title I school. If we truly cared about our remedial support here and the urgency to move forward with this, how come this district keeps cutting remedial staff and support to our high needs population that you speak of, our free and reduced children, as well as our pockets of poverty? Those are my concerns. My next question is, if we get to this point again with the next budget, how is this district going to move forward? Are we going to keep cutting remedial support as our number one thing? I would think in this district, now that we became an alliance district, that would not be the first thing that we'd be looking to cut. We'd be looking to cut the fluffy top that is not directly supporting our students down on the ground levels. Nobody in this district took a budget cut. Other towns that were going through things, the upper, higher income that are making way more than the teachers down at the ground level that are doing the majority of the work and have the lack of supplies to support them, people were taking cuts. So I have major concerns about, yes, we can talk about reallocating the funds, but my concern directly, if you truly care about the remedial students, we are not going to make that our first cut when we are faced with this budget again, because next year it's going to be the same problem. What are we going to cut next year? Remedial support? And then you're going to tell me that 4 weeks is going to make a difference in funding these children when they've been sitting without the support now since the start of school, and here we are in January. Those are my concerns. And I really hope that we get away from speaking about these pockets of poverty, because Groton is a very diverse population here in this town, and those pockets of poverty make Groton what it is. And with that, they deserve the same respect and dignity, and they do not, demand on the income of the remedial support as much as people may think. And I'm about sick of the reference to that. They deserve the respect and dignity. And if you cared about those pockets of poverty, you would continue to support the funding for remedial and math support. We would not be sitting here with a school currently, as we speak in January, with one reading support staff that's floating half the time between a non-Title I school, which is Cutler. So how do we get here? The other concern from the last town council meeting that I attended, we spoke about your referral came over and it was put into this document. It states how we have to put the funds back, the 1.5 whatever, but nowhere on here, I feel like it's a fair assessment. It's not really accurate. It doesn't state, what if we don't? How come that other option is not in here? It only is fluffed and stated for what came from central office. It states what we have to do per the state. But if we don't, my understanding from what I've read is that we would be penalized 2 times the amount. But that also should be disclosed to everybody here, and it should be in writing. So I challenge to hear how we're going to move forward with supporting our remedial support, our pockets of poverty, our children that are on free and reduced lunch that are draining our system, and how it is that today we still don't have any paperwork or any knowledge of exactly how we've been identified, but you have specified that we are in this problem because we are lacking the support. And today, January 10th, after these kids are almost, halfway through the school year, it is a concern now to move forward to make sure these kids get that support. Once they get on ground level, as it is, with it being almost February, once they start the standardized testing and school lets out in June, the services aren't going to be really rendered in the full intent that they should be. But once again, I do support education. I have major concerns about how we're spending them. So I'd like those questions addressed.
Well, I want to apologize if I in any way inferred that high needs children were somehow, by definition, free and reduced lunch. That those children, that's a disrespectful term. That's a state education department term. It's actually a federal education department term, and that is a major factor that played into. It's about 50% of the district performance index. In terms of what we cut last year and what was first, unfortunately, the very first thing we did was we closed the school because we had to cut initially $5.2 million from the budget. It ultimately got resolved down to $2.85 million from the budget. So we cut a lot of things. Primarily, we closed the school. And as we went through the budget, we lost teachers at all levels. We lost services. We lost across the board. We lost software money. We lost field trips and so forth. So having a $2,845,000 cut was of course a huge challenge for the board. And moving forward, we very much want to be sure that the children get these services as soon as possible. You know, we want to put those software programs in place. We want to put the personnel in place. And moving forward next year, we're very mindful of that. We don't want to use the funds that was clearly kind of laid out to us. We don't want to use the funds just to pay for teachers, because then when the grant goes away, then the teachers will go away. So we want to use the funds to do as best we can to build capacity. I guess that's the fairest answer I can give you.
And with the cut of an elementary school, understanding that we still have to pay for 300 students to be educated in the town of Groton,
right,
there should have been some cost savings there. How come that wasn't then pushed to the remedial support that you speak of? How much extra money was actually saved by closing Pleasant Valley, and where is that money currently being allocated?
Well, the budget was cut by $2,845,000. $1.3 million of that was the closing of the school. The more interesting question is, where do we get the other $1.5 million? It was a huge cut, and that's what happened. Painful as it was, but that's what happened.
Representative Whitney, and then Washington.
Thank you. I had some time to look over the 2015, 2016 accountability index numbers. It seems as a district, my read of it is that we're worse than state average in English language arts, as you mentioned, absenteeism, as you mentioned, but also physical fitness, which I was surprised at. Really.
That was like the worst thing.
Yeah, and then college and career readiness, and also college entrance. And that's actually for all the students, not just the high needs students. So the problems are district-wide. And there was a big difference between West Side and Cutler that I would hope could get corrected through allocation of funds to West Side, which didn't do as well. But my question is, the town council wants to appropriate or vote to appropriate $1.56 million from the general fund to the Board of Education to meet our minimum budget requirement. What what happens if we do not meet our minimum budget requirements? Specifically, how bad is that? I think
Well,
it's bad. I'd just like to know.
Yeah, well, the mechanism is that dollar for dollar, in next year's ECS, the state will deduct $2 for every $1 in other words, it's a 200% penalty. So let's say that a board was cut short by, say, $100,000. Then what would happen is next year's ECS would be reduced by $200,000.
So is that 3.2 billion penalty?
Well, it would depend how much. In order to get back to the minimum budget requirement, we need $1,568,239. But who's counting? So let's say of that 1.5, the only 1.4 was restored. Then next year's ECS would be reduced by 200,000. That's the answer.
Representative Washington?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would just want to say that I hope the money that the school system gets goes to those kids that need it most and goes to the students in the early grades. Because if we can educate those kids and give them a solid foundation, like building a house, that they will hopefully do well in the upper grades. So I hope the class sizes in kindergarten, there used to be 20, I hope they're still that, and I hope those kids are really getting what they need in those lower grades, and those high needs, whatever you call them, students are getting the support they need. My question would be with the middle schools, when you go to magnet schools, is that going to be open to all district students? Like, if I live in the city, can I apply to go to Cutler?
Yes.
Or is it going to be X amount of students from the city are going to have to go to the city, and there's going to be like 80 slots for Cutler?
Well, the way we're going to work it is all students have a choice. So the one choice that everybody will have is if they want to go to their home district, home school, we will honor that. If they want to go to the other school, the STEM or the arts magnet, depending upon where they live, that will be a lottery, and we will. It doesn't necessarily have to be even. Let's say that there are 100 students who want to go to the STEM school at Westside, but only 75 want to come to the art school. We could manage that. So we're hoping that we would honor everybody's request. Welcome.
Representative Pasqualini, and then Wells.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I don't feel comfortable in voting on this tonight, only because we have a number of questions and not clear defined numbers. So I think we should wait. I don't want to waste Dr. Graner's time of trying to come up with questions to make sure we have the information. At least that way the committee can hopefully weed through it and get it. And I want to look at last year's
There's
budget.
nothing on the floor at this point, so anyway. It would
Well, I
come
know
under
you
the-
asked whether or not we wanted to waive the rules. I just don't feel comfortable doing that, because obviously we still have many more questions.
Representative Wells, and then Sini.
Well, my question did get answered in the comments of Representative Bordelon and here and there. But as I understand it, as you're explaining it, if this money is not approved now or this, that it hurts the town significantly. So
Well,
we're going to
yes.
want to do this,
It would hurt
regardless
the
of what
revenue of
wonderful
the-
things you may or may not do with this extra money.
Right. It would hurt the revenue of the town.
Yeah.
It would reduce the revenue of the town.
So,
Yes.
so it's something we want to do regardless of how you spend the money. I mean, we know you do nice things.
Yes, but the board has already identified some of the, the special ed teacher, the 2 teachers at the middle school, the software, that's out in public. It actually is almost dollar for dollar what was cut. In other words, it was in the budget.
Right.
We wanted it to be in the budget, so now we're going to restore the budget, but we're restoring the budget back to 0.
We do this tonight, you hire people, and things move quickly. If we don't do it at all, it hurts the town going forward.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
significantly. So it's something we're going to want to do sooner.
Right.
or
Well,
later.
yes, yes.
And-
If
and
it
seems
didn't
like
happen.
Sooner is something we'd want to do.
Sooner is better.
Representative Sini?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on TV.
We can hear you, but no one else can.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just two simple questions, I think. First, how many districts are there? Of the districts that we talk about, we're 35.
About 155, maybe. I don't know. There are 169 towns, but there are some regional districts, so I'm going to guess about 150, 145.
Okay, and then just so I understand it right, so I understand there's nothing on the floor to vote on it, but we need to vote on the monies. Where do the monies exactly come from?
Well, the town.
Where would it?
The answer is the town has already received the extra 5 million.
Correct.
So the 3.5 would stay in the general fund, and the 1.5 would go to the board's budget.
And that general fund is 8.9. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. I just wanted to make sure I had my correct number.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I didn't see any other hands up, so I think we're going to move on. Thank you, Superintendent Graner. So I believe there are no liaison reports at this time. Oh,
Let me just correct myself. I pulled the finance. It's 10.9 right now, million.
okay. But there are committee reports, and I think at this point, there should be only one committee report, if I'm not mistaken, and so we'll hear from Chairman Washington of the Finance Committee.
Okay. The Finance Committee met this evening at 6 o'clock, 6:15, and the members present were Brandon Marley, Clarence Casper, myself, Beverly Washington, Roseanne Katowski, and Bob Martin. Bruce McDermott called. He's in Florida until April, so he was not able to attend. And I don't know what happened to Mr. Brayman.
He emailed.
Okay. So we discussed, the first referral was 2017-0287, and it is about the authorizing a supplemental appropriation to the contingency. This has to do with the wage increase. The town council approved the wage increase, but they need additional money to go into the contingency fund. They need $350,000 to go into the contingency fund from the fund balance to cover the wages. The contracts have already been signed, so even if we don't do anything, we still have to pay the people because the contracts have been signed. The committee members, when we voted, 2 people voted for this, and 2 people voted against it, so the motion actually failed in committee. But like I said, if we don't vote for it, the town would be in the red, we'd be starting off in the negative, and we have to pay the people because they signed a contract, and that's just the way it goes. I don't know if Cindy wants to come up and say
No,
anything.
so we can take the actual discussion under new business.
Okay.
But you can just, recap the other 2 motions, or 2 referrals, rather.
The next referral was 2017-0288, and it was a resolution for FYE 2018 general contingency transfers, but we didn't act on that motion because the first motion failed. Okay. So if you approve the first motion as a whole body of the RTM, then we can talk about the second motion, the second referral. Okay? The third referral was resolution increasing the appropriation for Town Hall Complex project, the FYE 2018 capital budget from capital reserve fund balance, and that referral is 2017-0289. And this is to the town, well, the public work manager. He's asking for $75,000 to complete phase 3 of fixing Fitch Middle School, so we can put all our recreation programs from William Saley into Fitch Middle School. So he wants to, he needs the $75,000 to put up firewalls and to put toilets into the middle school so we can use it. Now, once again, if we don't do this, according to Gary Snyder, we won't be able to use Fitch Middle School for our rec programs. So that means William Saley would have to stay open until William Saley falls apart, because William Saley needs a roof and a boiler. So, and originally he asked for $400,000, but the town council only allotted him $300,000, but the lowest bid came in at $339,000. So, so he needs the money to complete the project, the $75,000. That's what it boils down to.
So we need a motion to accept that report.
Make a motion to accept the report. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Point of order, Madam Moderator.
Okay, sorry. Sir.
We should have a discussion.
Sure.
So you normally, after it's been seconded, then you would ask.
Would you
is
like
there
to
any discussion?
speak, Representative Newsom?
Oh, no, ma'am. It's just
Okay.
that's the procedure, so
Thanks.
I didn't know if there's somebody from that meeting who wished to say something.
Oh, can I just say one other thing? I'm sorry. In committee, that referral did pass. 3 people were for it, 1 person was against it, and 1 person did abstain.
Point of order. That was 2017-0287 is not on my copy of the agenda.
The supplemental appropriation for contingency?
Yeah. Okay, I may just have I have the one from the email, so.
Oh, this was emailed also.
Yeah. I just want to make sure it's on the agenda, because I don't see it here.
Any
so.
other discussion? All right, all in favor of accepting the minutes as presented by Representative Washington? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you. I believe there is actually one other minute. We have the Temporary Rules and Procedures Committee that did meet, so.
Madam Moderator, Representatives, the detailed minutes were left on the table. I am not going to read them to you. They are boring. Essentially, we met on the 28th. The Temporary Rules Committee was Representative Newsom, Representative Richards, and myself. We really didn't have any major issues with the rules as they're written. Basically, we tweaked them. We added one new rule, which is now proposed as Rule 3.1 to actually indicate that we vote to elect the moderator. That's the big new rule, which we do automatically. We removed the words debate after from a subsection under moving the question on old Rule 3.7. And the reason we did that is to clarify that when you move the question, you don't have any debate after that. The whole point is to move the question. And it was felt that removing those words helped clarify what happens in that rule. There were the old rules as you got them, the rules of the 30th or the 29th, the RTM had a bunch of typos really in terms of rule numbers, and there was some extra, there was a date about, in Rule 4.1, a revision date, and in Section 5 there were the order of business was double lettered, so we cleaned that up. And then one other, I think, important rule that was offered to be modified was to add in Rule 8.1 that conflict of interest is defined by Section 3.53 of the Town Charter to emphasize when it is important to consider whether or not, as an RTM member, you have a conflict, if something's being voted on. So we identified that that's what the reference is to. You refer back to the definition in the Town Charter. I think the rest are all just renumbering and shifting some things that were under the moderator into other more appropriate categories. Okay. Any questions?
So I think now we would go into since we can slide into new business at this point if there are no questions. The first order of business is Representative Newsom.
So, Madam Moderator, I think we need to approve the meeting minutes for the Temporary Rules Committee.
Yeah. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, any seconds?
Second.
Is there a discussion?
Second. Massett second.
All right, hearing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you.
Here's my. One question that was asked to me in a caucus by a member, and for new members of the RTM, there's a reference in the rules to the word liaison, and you mentioned today about liaisons, and there may be members here who don't know what a liaison is. So basically, my understanding is a liaison is an RTM member who goes to the town council or goes to the Board of Ed meeting, sits in those meetings, and then comes back and gives a report to the RTM on what happened at those meetings.
That's correct.
So you can, and I don't know, have you appointed liaisons yet?
No, I asked for people who are interested in being liaisons at the beginning of the meeting to contact me, and there are 4 commissions, the Town Council, the Board of Ed, the Golf Advisory Board, and the Economic Development Commission all have liaisons. And so if you're interested, contact me. I did reach out to some people, but I haven't found anyone yet.
So you can either go to all those meetings yourself, or you can rely on the liaison to report the doings of those activities. Thank you, Madam.
All right, you might want to stay there, because we're going to slide into new business. And the first order is to adopt those minutes, and so we would need someone, hopefully you, to read the resolution to adopt specifically.
Yeah,
Or I can read it. It's this part right here.
Right, he has it in this form.
Okay, sorry.
I guess I am going to read this boring stuff to you. Resolution adopting rules for the 31st Representative Town Meeting Body, whereas the Temporary Rules and Procedures Committee has proposed that the following changes be made to the 30th RTM rules. New Rule 3.1, that the moderator shall be elected by a majority vote of the RTM members present at the first meeting of the newly elected RTM and shall serve for a term of 2 years. Next, old Rule 3.1 will be amended to read, in the case of any disturbance or disorderly conduct within the meeting hall, the moderator shall have the power to order persons causing such disturbance to remove themselves or be removed, and to be renumbered as Rule 3.3. Rule 7.3, strike debate after, 2 words, debate after, from the title of section 7.3. Rule 8.1, add, as defined by section 3.5.3 of the town charter at the end of the first sentence of section 8.1, rule 8.1. In rule 4.1 and in section 5, the order of business, to correct the typographical errors to be corrected. They aren't really specified there, but Madam Clerk knows what they are. Rule 3.556 will be renumbered as Rule 3.2 and change the words controlled debate, delete the words controlled debate, and substitute chair the RTM. Rule 3.445 and Rule 3.667 are going to be moved to Section 8 and be renumbered as Rule 8.6 and Rule 8.7. Rule 3.778 be renumbered as Rule 3.7. Rule 3.711 is going to be moved to the general section and be renumbered as Rule 9.6. Rule 3.8 moved to Section 8 and be renumbered as 8.8.
Did you want to move that as a?
I move that we make those corrections or modifications.
Is there a
to the
second?
rules.
I second. Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I wanted to point out that the meeting agenda does not currently list all the items that were read off.
Can't hear you. I don't know if that's not working.
The meeting agenda.
Go
Up. There you go. Hear me now?
Yeah.
Works. The agenda did not list all the items that were read off, and I would like to make a note for the minutes that that be reflected. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Marshall. I also had a question about the new rules on page 5, I believe. I think there might have been an error, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention on Rule 6.5. And item 6.5.3, it has 3 bullets under it, and it looks like bullet 3 conflated what previously was bullet 3 and 4, and the words "the meeting" are missing after "prior to the." So it would be a written summary of the matter must appear on the agenda and have been sent to each RTM member prior to the meeting. Insert there, and then the sentence starting "while the matter must have been referred to the RTM at least 7 days prior to the meeting. The town council may or may not have taken action prior to 7 days. The town council must have taken action prior to the RTM meeting," would be a bullet number 4. This is how it was in the previous minutes when I was looking at that. But I think I leave it up to you. I was not at the meeting. I just am wondering if that was perhaps a typographical error.
Are you reading from the new rules?
Yeah, the ones that we were given, yes.
Because that's not something that I think that might be a carryover type over from, because when you were reading that,
It's different in the original.
I have the old numbers.
I have the other rules, but maybe I'm wrong. I just want to put it out there because that's what my copy says.
Right.
That wasn't what we
Thank you.
suggested.
It wasn't discussed.
All right, so there's a motion. There's a second. Representative Newsom.
So before we vote, let's make sure we're clear. Those changes that we were just discussing, and I don't remember seeing them in the old rules. So were they actually in the old rules and we just didn't see them?
What I just said?
Right.
Yeah, what I said was in the old rules, and it was 2 bullets. It was 2 points under 6.5.3. There were 4 bullets, and then now there are 4 bullets, but the last one, which was 6.5.4, has become number 4. So 2 bullets were conflated into one with the deletion of 2 words, the meeting and a period. And then there should be another one, another bullet, which starts with while the matter. That would be bullet 4. And then what is now bullet 4, which is any matter of proper interest, would come out and be item 6.5.4. That's how the previous rules were. And I wasn't at the meeting, but that's, I'm reading.
So what happened was that when attached with your agenda stuff, Madam Clerk produced the new rules of the 31st RTM to be adopted. Those things that were just read were not anything that we touched in committee. It was a typo when they made the new rules. Right. So this motion, the resolution that I'm asking, doesn't include those errors.
Right, that's good.
Okay, that's a clarification I was looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See that, right.
Thank you, Representative Newsom and Representative Monahan and Representative Richards for all your time and for clarifying that. Any other comments, discussion?
So the procedure, if you adopt these tonight, you'll get what has been voted on tonight in your next packet. If you see a problem at that point, we'll fix it again. I really have to tell you that you have to look through this with a fine-tooth comb and really scrutinize it, as Representative Marshall Monahan will tell you. Yep. So that's how it'll work. If you adopt it tonight, you'll see the full change from what was said tonight in the next set of rules. Okay?
And I would say that if you see any other rules that you want to change, you can refer it to the new Rules Committee.
That's right. Anytime.
Okay.
So any other questions? Representative Whitehouse, please.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the 6.5.3.3 and 6.5.3.4 are going to be the same as they were in the 30th?
Correct.
That's just a typo?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Shall we?
Wait. Well.
What? Yeah. No, we are. That's what I was going to do. So we have a motion and a second on the floor, and there doesn't appear to be any discussion. So all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the new rules, as discussed, do pass. 34-0-0. Great. So then we do have a few other items on our new business to discuss, and perhaps would you like to give a present? We have the 3 items, the referrals from the town council that the finance. So would Representative Washington like to come up and read those motions? Or those resolutions? I guess they're resolutions.
Okay. Supplemental appropriation for contingency, resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation to contingency, whereas the town charter provides for supplemental appropriations to the adopted budget, and whereas during FYE 2018 budget deliberations, only the labor agreements for the CILU-telecommunicators employees have been settled, and those wage increases were included in the department's FYE 2018 budget. And whereas during FYE 2018 budget deliberations, additional funding was included in the FYE 2018 contingency function to partially cover the cost of undetermined wage/salary increases for the remaining employee groups, CILU-clerical, United Steelworkers, Parks, Public Works, Police, AFSCME supervisors, and non-union, and whereas wage increases for the 3 of those groups, CILU clerical, AFSCME supervisors, non-union, have been incorporated into a department's FYE 2018 budget through a general contingency fund, and whereas wages increases for the police are now known and should be incorporated into the department's FYE 2018 budget through a general contingency transfer, and whereas the current contingency balance will be insufficient to cover wage increases and other unforeseen, unexpected expenses that may occur during the year, now therefore be it resolved that $350,000 is appropriated from the general fund unassigned fund balance to contingency function 1074 and referred to the RTM under Rule 6.5.3 for approval. And once again, these contracts have already been settled by the town council, but we're short the $350,000.
So we need a motion. So you read it. Is that a motion?
Yep, that's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
So you wanted to
Any
speak to it?
discussion?
Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So there was 4 people on the Finance Committee, so that's a quorum. 2 voted for it, 2 voted against. I'd like to hear from those who voted against this as to what the rationale was.
2 people voted for it, 2 people voted against it, and 1 person abstained.
Okay.
Okay.
And that abstention's not here.
Still.
Marley's not here.
Representative Katowski?
Again, I'm sorry, but why did the people who voted against it, what was their rationale?
I'll let them speak for
I
themselves.
will call on Representative Katowski, and she can answer your question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I did not support this due to the 8.7% tax increase we had this year. I believe no one should have got a raise in Groton this year. It is misperception that contracts can't be reopened. I work in a town where during the budget crisis, every union contract was reopened and all employees gave back. All of us did, to help the town get through the state revenue decline. So I didn't support this. I know this is probably going to be a vote of 40-1, but I think Groton is a culture of just too much spending, and we have to start somewhere. And I think what they need to do is go to the employees, get some concessions, and then come back to us. Thank you.
Representative Massett?
Just a
1 minute, what?
The question from Representative Newsom was to see the opinions or the answer of the 2 people that voted against it.
Well, Representative Marley has left, and Representative Katowski was the other person.
Okay.
No, he abstained.
Oh, he abstained, sorry.
So,
Sorry.
so you're
Representative Martin, would you, I will call back on you, Representative Massett. If Representative Martin could also address the question. Sorry about that.
Sure. Thank you for your allowing me to speak. I would echo what she said. It's we paid a tax increase to 8.7 last year. It seems like a huge number, and unless something changes significantly in the state, I suspect we're going to be doing something similar again next year. I think it's time we got to draw a line, and this is that point. So I was unable to support the salary increase.
Thank you. Representative Massett?
Just a quick question. Is the Director of Human Resources here? Okay. Well, maybe the town manager can answer my question, and it's more for clarification and my own education. My understanding is that this money, number one, was set aside to accommodate these raises in last year's budget. That's number one. Number two, maybe we can, but I don't think that we can
just willy-nilly, as a body, say, okay, we're not going to approve something that you already approved, that the money was set aside for, and you need to reopen your contract. I think if we start doing that, we will have started down a very slippery slope. I understand that somehow, some way, we need to save money, but we can't, in this body, say, nope, you're not going to get your raises. Labor contracts are legally binding, and these contracts have been approved. So if the issue is that people are making too much money, we will be discussing a budget shortly. And there will be ways to address how that happens.
Representative Whitehouse, then Richards.
Point of order, again, the questions were not answered by the town manager, or an opportunity was not given to answer the questions.
Manager Burt, would you like to respond?
And I believe there's really only one real question to me, but in terms of whether it was set aside, at the time of I wasn't here for the budgeting, so I'm speaking secondhand, but my understanding is that in any given year, all of our contracts happen to be coming up right about the same time. You don't know at the beginning, going into budgeting, whether you're going to really settle them that year, whether it's going to go through the whole binding arbitration process. So some money was put in a contingency, to cover some of it, knowing that they would be coming back here for the rest if those happen to settle out during this year. So, and now that's the time. So it was known that we'd be coming back here for additional funds. So.
Thank you. Representative Whitehouse.
Yeah, along those same lines, too, there's also a matter of just the faith that employees have in their employer when they sign a contract. Imagine if your job offered you a raise and then said, oh, just kidding, we changed our mind. Imagine if you even heard there was a conversation about pulling back your raise. Now, I don't know all the employees of town. I've met a few, and the ones I've met have seemed like pretty good, honest, hardworking people. And I believe the raise we're talking about is 2%, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're talking about 2% raise. I haven't met all the town employees, but I don't think any of them drive like Rolls Royces or Bentleys. I maybe used one, but we're talking about a 2% cost of living inflation-based raise, which is less than the binding arbitration rate. I believe John told us in the Finance Committee meeting. And obviously, it is our job to discuss this and deliberate, but it's not fair to seriously consider pulling back their raises and asking them after they have signed their contract. It's not like we offered them a 10% raise or something massive. This is something that was apparently in the budget before it was prepared for, and so it seems to me fair that we give them the raise that we negotiated because they do the work for us and we should pay them. I think. I mean, I'm new to the RTM, so maybe it's a different way we do things. But based on my knowledge of economics and business, that's good business.
Thank you. Representative Richards.
I have a question that perhaps the finance director could answer. Where did the contingency fund start at this year, and what else has been taken from that fund throughout the year?
The fiscal 2018 budget started at $650,000, and that, as Town Manager Burt said, we had included some extra funding in contingency with the anticipation that these contracts would settle, but we did not include what was anticipated to be the full amount. And we have, there was a prior contingency transfer that was for some of the contracts that had already settled earlier. That was for $298,000, $123,000. And that's how we have the remaining balance of $344, $376 in the contingency balance.
And what was that spent on for the contingency transfer earlier?
Those were also for raises.
Can you be more specific about what departments or areas?
Those were the CILU clerical union, the AFSCME supervisors, and the non-union group. Sure. Oh, sure.
Just to add that this will leave some balance in that contingency fund for emergencies. For instance, we're already running low on, with snow coming so heavy, we're already running short on that. So this allows us to deal with those issues as they come up too.
Representative Streeter?
Thank you, Moderator. I understand the wage increases, but I have a concern, and I'd like to have a clarification where it says, whereas the contingency balance will be insufficient to cover wage increases and other unforeseen, unexpected expenses that may occur during the year. What are those?
Well, when we put the contingency budget, as John had just mentioned, if we were to have a supplemental appropriation to Public Works for salt, if we have a bad winter, which we've had a couple of, I think it was 2 years ago, we had to have a tremendous amount of money. Or if there were any other, if we were to have a hurricane or a natural disaster or, say, a building burned down or something that we just can't predict might happen. This leaves us, if it's not spent, as you know, it would go back to the fund balance at year end.
So none of the $350,000 is these unexpected?
No, it's a number that we came up with to cover the wage increases, but to give us a cushion based on because we don't know what could happen between now and June.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Mello Miller?
I just wanted to clarify, so you said that what Representative Shooten said about the unforeseen, unexpected expenses. So you're anticipating, you're defining unforeseen, unexpected as snow, as natural disasters. So we're not talking about any other contracts or anything in that regard that may come up.
Well, we do have one contract remaining for the steel workers that is still in negotiations, and it has not been settled, but that would be the final contract. So it would be hope, if we do have that contract settled prior to June, I would hope that the funding that we're putting into the contingency today would cover that also.
Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to ask the town manager, just because the body is new and many people don't understand the funding of everything here, what contingency are and what fund balance is, and so that we understand why we have a reserve in the fund balance to fund the unexpected things. And it's important that we fund it, because we need to realize that we can't just go back when it says zero. We have to wait to get money to do things. And when that happens, it costs us more money. It costs us money in legal fees, it costs us money in contracts, everything gets extended out, and then in the long run, we're spending more money. So if the town manager or, you know, or Representative Landry could explain this to the body. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry. First of all, in terms of course, everyone's aware the general fund is our primary catch-all fund, where most of the operations are funded out of. The fund balance is basically the difference between the assets and liabilities, how much the accounts valued after expenses are taken from revenue, so it's how much excess you have funds. The contingency is a piece of the general fund. It's just a portion of all your budgeted items in the general fund. Contingency is, you know, most of it, you have your police part and your town manager part, but one of it, we have contingency, just knowing you got to have, you know, just like in a construction project, you have contingency. Just for operations, you have to have contingency just for things to come up that you can react to as they, and you know, it varies from year to year, but you kind of track, and you know you need a certain amount, and we know at this point in the year, being only halfway through the year, that we're going to need money to get through. So.
Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Director Zagami, you take part in a lot of these negotiations on behalf of the town. Is there any perspective you'd like to provide for us?
Thanks. I think a couple of things that may be misstated. I think one is this ease of opening up contracts. And I think it was a great point made. regarding, you know, bargaining in good faith, and all of a sudden you come back to the table and you say, geez, you know, what we got from you to get what we were looking for, we now want to make changes. Do you think they're going to be saying to us, well, okay, we'll give you that back, now all these other things? So what I wanted to do real quickly is look at the clerical contract and kind of show you what some of the things we work on. These are some of the things that happened through negotiations. Reducing layoff notice period 90 to 30 days and the recall period from 2 to 1 years. Probably doesn't sound like a real big thing to have, but that's very important to us, logistics-wise. Bifurcating sick leave accumulation. Employees hired prior to July 1st, 2016 may accumulate up to 200 days. Employees hired on or after July 1st, 2016 limited to 150 days. Eliminate language that employees who have accrued in excess of the maximum sick leave allowances would be allowed to convert sick leave to pay. Eliminating absence with pay for special religious holidays. Streamlining the family and medical leave so that it matches the federal law, as opposed to being the federal law and then some, which is what it was previously. Eliminating pay for jury duty to a maximum of 15 days. Simplifying military leave because it was more than what the law called for. We've brought it back and walked it back to that. Reducing workers' compensation differential pay from 1 year to 6 months. Requiring all bargaining unit employees to utilize the town's timekeeping system place in recording time worked. Increase in allowance for the purchase of OSHA. That was something we gave, that they got like $25 more for a couple of people that had to buy shoes. But we also got, that was very important, the real critical thing here was because of health insurance is going so high, we need to get away from the regular health insurance and to go to what they call a high deductible health plan, which means if you have a family now, you have a $4,000 deductible before we start, you know, before the insurance starts to kick in. That's been approved by GMEA. It's been approved by AFSCME, which is a supervisors union, and it's been approved by the policemen's union. So these are some things that we don't seem to be talking about, you know, what gains were made against these particular, you know, against these raises and everything. But that's the way negotiations go. And the other part is, if Ledyard actually, if that's the city she's referring to, or town she's referring to, you can ask the union to come back to the table. You can't make them. So that's, you know, we're under the impression that you just, hey, come back to the table. I know what some of the answers might be, you know, and I mean, if we get to a different point, yeah, I can't say it on TV, that's for sure. But anyways, that's basically what it is. I think in the last couple of years, I've been here, this is my 4th year, going on my 5th, we've really started to work contracts to make a difference in contracts. When I first got here, there was contracts that they told us, we can't ask for that, we can't get that. And now all of a sudden, we're working toward these things and we are getting them. Is it a game of inches? It sure is. But we're definitely making some, you know, we're definitely making some strides going forward in the contracts. We're nowhere near where we want to be, and it's not like we don't want to be the employer of choice. That's important. You know, it's very important to have people that come in here that are great workers, and we get a fair day's work for a fair day's wages. That's all I can add. Thank you, Representative Newsom, for giving me an opportunity to talk. You have a question?
Yes, Director. Would you say that the overall benefits pie for the workers' union is the same or less? It seems like there's a lot of cuts that will actually affect savings over the long run. But the question is, the budget, the folks are still getting raises. But it seems like, in my opinion, and I would like to see if your opinion on this as well, is that the overall benefits pie, even though they're getting a raise of 2%, is that they are making concessions and thus they're effectively getting less.
I wouldn't say less.
I wouldn't say we're getting less, but we're moving in a direction where we can do something with budgets and we can make some sense. We're removing handcuffs, and a lot of these things you might think, geez, well, you're only reducing some of the FMLA and things like that at the time, but you know, in actuality, those are things that when you've got someone out on FMLA for extra time, what do you have? You have to put somebody else in there for overtime. So, you know, when you have workers' comp that you're paying somebody out to, you know, a full Monty to go over to a year and you reduce it to 6 months, those are things that are very critical. So there have been a lot of things we've had some things that we achieve and everything, but the one thing I don't think we want to do is I don't think we want to really ruin employee relations or get the word out there that Groton's not the place to come to work. Thank you.
Are there any other folks wishing to speak? Representative Syma.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Okay, I think I have this right. Wait.
There's no escape here.
I'll be gentle. So I'm not sure who can answer this, but I think it was answered. How much money was put into the general fund or the contingency fund?
It started at $650,000. That was what was appropriated in the 2018 budget.
And we're asking for another
$350,000.
100,000. We're going to say 100,000. And how many people is that for in all those groups? Just a roundabout number, not precise.
Well, I happen to have it here, but I know when we look at the supervisor, what the heck is this? That's not mine. Must be yours. I think I'd like to read that too. But anyways, let's see. We also, one thing I left out too, just before I go, the retirees are also going, they'll be able to maintain their same insurance this year for health insurance, but come the following year, if they wish to stay on their insurance, they have to also move to the high deductible health plan. So there are some gains there. Back to your question. Let's see. There's 5 people, I know off the top of my head, that's the easy one. There's 5 people, and ask me, what's the supervisors union? There's about 46 people are in our steelworkers union, which we're in negotiations right now. I'm guessing there's about, probably around the number of about 50 or 60, I'm thinking in the GMEA union, and there's probably about, who's the other one? Oh, the police, there's probably about 70 people in that. So those are kind of round numbers. And I can get back to you with specifics.
No, I don't need the specifics. I just wanted a roundabout. So we're going to say 160 people for 650,000, right?
That was the original amount.
Original, now we're adding the 350, okay? And then that's including, that 160 is including the steel workers, which is not done yet,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a couple questions. I'm obviously new to this. The amount that was set aside that was just disclosed, how come we are not setting the full amount? I have a question as to why we only set a portion of that amount away. And as I feel, everybody deserves their raise because, you know, when you work hard, things are going up, and cost of living to stay here in Groton, if you want people to stay here, you got to pay them. And the people that are keeping us here and keeping us safe and working in this town deserve, I feel, their raise. But it's hopeful that you're streamlining things, but some things that I'm hearing you say I don't necessarily see as a gain, like the retirees going to a high-cost deductible. I guess if I was at retirement age and I was going to go to a high-cost deductible, I would be a little bit concerned. So,
Well, that's
it's-
already negotiated in the contract that they follow,
Yeah.
that they actually follow, that's in the contract
I guess
prior
it-
to this.
yeah.
That's in the retirement contract, that
Right.
they follow it.
Okay.
So that's
I guess
nothing new.
Okay. I guess it's, you guys said it's a benefit. I guess I just wouldn't see that as a benefit to a retiree. But I just, like I said, wonder why we're not putting money aside to plan for these instead of coming at this date and asking for more. The other question was, some people were already paid out a figure of an amount. How come they were paid and not everybody at once? How come everything's so staggered? I know some of it has to do with contracts, but is there a way that we can kind of get a grasp on this and do our due diligence to our employees that serve us here in this town and make sure that we're putting the proper funds in advance away so that we can properly serve them?
I'll answer the question about why the $650,000. We did realize at budget time last year that that was not going to be sufficient to cover all of the unions. And we made a budgetary decision to come up with a compromise number, knowing that it was going to be a difficult budget year. The thought was we would just make that cut there, and hopefully we wouldn't need to come back, but knowing that we probably would have to come back. And as far as the contracts, I'll let Bob speak to this, but they all expire about the same time, but going through the negotiations, you just never know how long it's going to take to negotiate one contract.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Representative Monahan?
Madam Moderator, I move the question.
Is there a second? Second. All right, not debatable. All in favor of moving the question? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, motion passes. So let's see, does anyone need the motion? Do we need to reread the motion?
No, you can just.
Okay. So I have to put my reading glasses on then. So the motion on the floor is 2017-0287, supplemental appropriation for contingency. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
So that's 32 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, motion passes.
Read the, you have to read it.
What?
32, you have to read it.
Oh, sorry, 32 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. Motion passes.
Well, now that that motion passed, we can talk about 2017-0288. We didn't talk about that in committee because the first motion didn't pass. So we'll talk about it as a body, whole body. Okay?
Yeah, and if you could read it.
Yeah, I'll read it.
Thank you.
Okay. Contingency transfer for wage increases and other items. Resolution for FYE 2018 general contingency transfers. Whereas the town charter provides for general contingency transfers during the year, and whereas during FYE 2018 budget deliberations, only the labor agreements for the CILU telecommunicators employees had been settled, and those wage increases were included in a department's FYE 2018 budget. Whereas during FYE 2018 budget deliberations, labor agreements, pay plans were not known and were not included in a department's budget for the remaining employee groups: CILU-clerical, United Steelworkers, Parks, Public Works, Police, AFSCME supervisors, and non-union. And whereas wage increases for police are now known and should be incorporated into the department's FYE 2018 budget through a general contingency transfer, and whereas the retirement of the former town manager resulted in additional expenses in function 1010 executive management And whereas during budget deliberation, funds were included in the general contingency in anticipation of wage adjustments occurring during the fiscal year for a total contingency appropriation of $650,000, now therefore be it resolved that $415,052 is transferred from the general fund contingency function, hashtag 1074, to the following general fund departments function and refer to the RTM 6.5.3 for approval. You have to read all these transfers? Transfers from contingency to functions. Legislative policy, $32. Voter registration, $503. Town clerk, $3,940. Executive management, $63,650. IT, $5,878. Finance, $12,655. Public safety, $271,589. Public works, $10,030. Planning and development, $9,650. Human services, $9,052. Library, $18,637. And parks and rec, $9,436, for a total of $415,052.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Representative Mello Miller?
Okay, I'm not sure who can answer this, but about the finance director, oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one, sorry. Okay, so as far as the town manager retiring, which resulted in the additional expenses, so, and I'm sorry, I'm new on the RTM, so we were not anticipating the manager retiring at that time? Was that what happened, or?
No, when the budget was put together, we had not known that the former town manager was going to retire. So we would not have put that increase in the town manager's budget for his payment.
So, and I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate, could it have been something that we had been preparing for as a town to say, okay, we think that maybe this gentleman might retire, and so we can, I mean, or is that thinking too optimistically that we would prepare for that?
I think what you're saying is, why don't we budget for retirements?
Exactly, why don't we budget for retirements?
It's not something we've ever done. We don't really want to, push employees to say when you're going to retire. We have several town staff are eligible to retire now.
So if we have several town staff that are eligible to retire, you're saying that we are not planning for that, we're not putting contingencies in place as far as monetarily?
We're not budgeting for anticipated retirements. No, we're not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Pasqualini?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just have one question and one comment. When these were calculated and we come up to what monies were saved? Is that put against what we're increasing? I mean, was there any savings in what was negotiated, such as insurance? So that changed. Are we getting a savings there, and why wouldn't that be put toward the total amount being asked for wages? Because, am I explaining it right to you?
I think so, but
if we negotiated the contract, we did a 2% raise, but with everything we negotiated, we saved $50,000. Well, that $50,000 should show up somewhere as the savings, not kept there and rolled on, because that's why the contract's negotiated. We don't realize the savings because the savings never show. You say we negotiated the contract and we save $100,000, but it's never ever shown because the next year that department is not $100,000 short, reduced. It's rolled right in. So it appears that it's never realized.
Well, if we were to have a savings in benefits, from health insurance, that's not in the department's functions. That would, you would see in contributions under non-departmentals. So the savings would probably be reflected in the following year if we had several people who, you know, left the town, and so we're no longer paying their benefits. But I do understand what you're saying about it, why it doesn't roll, but.
Right, and the only comment that I make for the whole body is through 10 budgets, we've always had a contingency plan. I've never, ever sat here having to go into other accounts to refund that. And I've complained for the last 4 years that it seems to be used as a piggy bank. As things just override, we go to the contingency. And my belief, the contingency was bad year of snow, an explosion somewhere, something we need money for, emergencies. Not, oh geez, this project was $10,000 short, let's just pull it out of that. I'm just hoping that with the economy and the way we're increasing that this isn't why, because originally when I believe here, we started out at 350,000, 300,000, somewhere around there. And with this whole total, we need almost $1 million. That's a problem. $1 million in contingency when you don't even have a bad snow year. So I just thinking about it.
I just had one comment, that if we did have cost savings, they wouldn't flow back to contingency. It would just flow back into the unreserved fund balance. So if you see the fund balance going up, when I do net of operations at the end of each year and I give you the impact on the fund balance, that's where you'd see it. But you'd see it at the end of the year.
So just to reiterate, the last motion, we put money into contingency, and then this one is taking that money from contingency and then putting it into the general fund. Representatives, I'm sorry, see, Chase, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Since I'm so new at this, I know earlier they said 0287 failed, so they couldn't act on the 0288. And I'm not sure who to address this to, maybe Director Landry. So if you're asking for $350,000 in 0287, why are we asking for $415,000 052?
Right. The $350,000 is coming from the general fund's fund balance to increase the amount in the contingency account, because the second resolution, I need $415,000 to transfer out of that account. And if I don't have sufficient funds going into it, there's not enough money in that to cover those wage increases that have already been approved. And then by picking the $350,000, we did want to leave some type of a cushion in case we did have some unforeseen emergency basis, and we keep going back to snow, but that seems to be on the horizon here. Because if you do recall the couple of years ago when we had one storm after another, and we did have to put some additional money into Public Works for salt and sand. Does that make sense?
Well, it's still a little cloudy to me, so does that mean you're getting extra money so that you will have a balance in?
Yes, we will have a small balance.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Representative Washington?
How much is the balance in the contingency?
The balance in the contingency prior to the $350,000 was $344,000, and then after I put if you put the 350 in and I take out the 415, it leaves about 279.
Okay, that's what I got. I just want to make sure my math.
Is there any other discussion? Representative Sini?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So you did answer one question of what the cushion is, but what if you don't get the money? Where's it going to come from? How are you going to pay? The contracts have been signed.
Right. What would happen is we're obligated. They are legal obligations. We have to pay the employees. And what would happen is the departments would probably be overdrawn at year end. It would probably be noted in the audit. It's not a good budgeting practice.
Representative Monahan?
Madam Moderator, it seems to me that most of the discussion we had on the prior resolution really is applicable, so in that spirit, I move the question.
Second.
Okay, Okay, it has not been 10 minutes of discussion because I've been timing it, but I would like to cede the floor to the town clerk.
Thanks. I just, to one of the questions about how does this come about with when someone leaves a department? Well, you'll see in my budget next year, you're going to see a difference in my employees because my deputy retired. And my new deputy doesn't make as much money as my old deputy. So you're going to see his cost savings. Don't think that I did something heroic, but that money, extra money, goes right back into the general fund. Does that make sense?
All right, so I think we're ready we can call the question if you want, but we can also vote on this. Should we vote on it?
Well, you said no because you said we hadn't had a discussion for 10 minutes.
But now, because Betsy wanted to say something. And I have been timing it, but it's fine.
I question this. I second.
Fine. All right, all in favor?
Aye. Streeter seconded it.
Any opposed?
Newsom, Mikowski,
Any abstentions?
Marshall.
Okay. Question passes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is 20.
Wait, we need to vote.
We can vote on the motion now. Let me just read it. So now we are voting on 2017-0288 contingency transfer for wage increases and other items. Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Or any opposed? Any abstentions?
That's Stanford. Stanford, one abstention. 31 in favor.
31 in favor, one opposed, and one abstention. The motion passes.
2017-0289 supplemental appropriation for the town hall complex. Resolution increasing appropriation for the town hall complex project in the FYE 2018 capital budget from capital reserve fund balance. Whereas a project was approved in the FYE 18 capital improvement, that's the CIP, entitled 6C Town Hall Complex to complete the third phase of a multiple phase project to prepare the Fitch Middle School for reuse. And whereas the Public Works Department received 6 bids on Thursday, November 9th for the work, and there is insufficient funding to include a construction contingency to award the lowest base bid. And whereas in order for the project to proceed, additional funding in the amount of $75,000, that's including a 10% construction contingency, must be appropriated. And whereas the finance director has determined that there are insufficient funds in the fund balance of the capital reserve fund, now therefore be it resolved that the FYE 2018 CIP Project 6C Town Hall Complex be increased by an additional appropriation of $75,000 from the capital reserve fund balance.
Okay, and is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Representative Mello Miller?
Okay, I have a few questions, actually, and I'm sorry, I assume you're Mr. Snyder?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I had a hunch. So I had a few questions, the first of which, so we say this is a multi-phase project. So what were the first and the second phase, because we said this is the third, and how many phases are there? Is this the last phase that we're...
Correct. This is the third and last phase to occupy what we call wings B, C, and D. Wing A is the 2-story building that you see on really from Fort Hill Road. B, C, and D are the lower sections of the are the 1-story sections of the building. There was some handouts.
I got some.
There's some color handouts.
Take one if you already have one, please.
So there's two other phases that was approved by the RTM and the town council through funding. The first phase was to redo the roof on Wing A. It was leaking, it needed to be replaced, that was done. The second phase, then the department went before the council and the RTM, and we wanted to do the second and third phase together and ask for an appropriation of close to, I do believe, $700,000. It was decided by the town council to do two phases instead of one. So the second phase was to install the sprinkler system for $300,000 through the building. Not the entire building was sprinklered, and the fire alarm. That was just completed. It was $300,000 was appropriated. We're just closing the paperwork out now. There's about $50,000 left in that. That will go back to the undesignated, that'll go back to the fund balance for the capital reserve fund. I cannot use it for this project because it specifically isn't just for Fitch Middle School, it's specifically for the fire apparatus, the sprinkler system at Fitch Middle. This is the third and last phase to do three things. One is to put some firewalls back into the building that were once there. So this is for fire code. To put fire stopping in all the penetrations in the walls that over the years people just made a larger hole and didn't put the fire stopping. No, well, it's not asbestos bearing material, but some cement or other caulking so fire can't spread from one section to the other. There's some egress doors that need to be done, handicapped accessible. Some handicapped parking spaces that have to be done, and all of the toilets in B and C and D wings. All the toilet rooms, there's a minimal amount of toilets and showers that must be made handicapped accessible. That's what the project does. So what the project will do, it will let the building official and the fire marshal authorize us to occupy wings B, C, and D and move direct programs from Sealy School to Fitch Middle School. And Fitch Middle School, that's the name of it. Maybe it'll get another name at some other time to that school. What will happen then with William Sealy School, we will then mothball that in cold storage. We'll pump the oil, we'll blow out the water from the systems, there will be some lighting on, and the fire marshal, I do believe, will want the fire alarm still kept up there, so very minimal maintenance or very little expense. And then that is part of the properties that the town is marketing with, trying to market and sell. So this is the last phase to occupy it. Will there be other phases? If we want to use Wing A, the two-story, we're going to have to go through some of the same items. If there's going to be some modifications for the rec programs, absolutely. And like anything, the boilers that are there are going to need to be replaced in the future. But this will get us to occupy the building.
I want to touch on Wing A in just a moment, but I do want to ask if a compliance study has been done specifically for ADA for the wings, the B, C, sorry, the wings that are going to be in use.
Right.
An ADA study specifically. So
what we did is we had an architect review, go through it, and what we need to do is there's certain toilet stalls that have to have the 5-foot radius in it. There has to be some openings. Some of the doors have to be a little wider. So we're just doing the minimal count of toilets that we need for that square footage, and then put those stalls in. We are not renovating the entire toilet room, the male and female toilet room. So we're just touching what we need to do to meet the current code. And I have a set of plans back there that we could look at later on if you'd like.
So part of this is that we have to bring this building up to code. Right now, it's not up to code, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I want to touch on Wing A. So has Wing A even been explored, how much it may cost to bring it up to code, to use it? Has it been explored? Why wasn't Wing A included in this project?
There was a study done that was, I believe about 3 years ago, was to take a look at the whole building. What could be placed in that whole building, combined departments, Board of Education, maybe Spicer House, utilize the whole building, bring it up to current code, current use, and I mean use like good office areas. That number was approaching $15 million. So we, the town, backed away from that and said that we need to do this in steps. One is everything doesn't need to be renovated as new. What can we do and use? And so that's where we're taking the stepped approach. In the Wing A, there'll be the same things. We would need to modify some of the sprinkler systems that are there. The fire alarm would have to be improved. the toilets, and it'll be some of the egress areas. Do believe a couple of stairwells may not quite meet it, but it's modifications. It's really not touching everything else. Then we can move people in. Since it was a school, if you want to turn it into an office area, now you're looking at the number of outlets per room. We would have to bring more electrical into the building, and none of it's air conditioned. So part of the things would be bringing the HVAC into that area right now for an office area. But it is good space. It's well kept. The envelope, the exterior walls, windows, and ceiling, and the roof are sound. So we're keeping the water out. We're keeping the mold out. It's there for reuse. We just cannot use it because of the codes.
And you may not know this, but how much is it costing to kind of leave Wing A just kind of off there? I mean, what is it costing us any money to just kind of not do anything with it?
It's really costing us, well, it's costing us the same amount of money as it's costing now because we're not occupying it. So if we wouldn't do this work, I'd still have a building I'm going to have to heat and put a fire alarm in and maintain.
Wait, you're heating Wing A? Did you say you're?
Yes, we are, because we don't want molds and mildews to occur. And second, if you don't heat a building, so the paint starts peeling, the plaster or the sheetrock starts deteriorating, and it just goes downhill really fast. So there is minimal heat in that building right now. Currently, at Fitch Middle School, the rec department is using the main gym. That's the only large...
Even though it's not ADA compliant right now?
Even though that portion is not ADA compliant. It was used that way when it was when the Board of Education had it as a school. The rec program could use it at night, and the code officials, when the Board of Education left the use of that building, they let us continue using just the gymnasium and those locker rooms.
So...
Could they have kicked us out? Yes.
Okay, so right now, it's not up to code and people are using it anyway?
It's just that one small area.
Okay.
The code officials were being considerate.
Oh, okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Newsom?
I think Representative Mel Miller answered all of my questions. Thank you very much.
Representative Bordelon?
My first question is, has the water been tested at this site? I know that some of our older schools in Groton have recently tested positive for lead, and with this being one of our old schools and having children in there, obviously having rec, using the gym, what have you, is part of this making sure that we're testing the water for to be safe for the children?
The answer is no. In fact, we're not testing any of our public buildings. I don't know if the schools have different requirements. I know lead affects everybody because of the age. I will contact that. Good point. I will contact the health district to see if a survey of all town buildings should. It is public water, Groton utilities, but so are most of the schools.
I think this is a wonderful facility, and I was sad to see it closed prematurely before our new school was built and stuffing our middle schools that are busting at the seams. So it's interesting now that this building can be habitable again, and we're finding the funding to renovate it, which I support in the sense that it's a rec building for our children. So I think it's a great idea, and I hope that we continue to refurbish this building. I think we lack recreational facilities for our children in this area. You know, I would like to see this building turn into a public community center that's run by the rec, where children can go and play basketball and have open nights and support here, because it's centrally located. So checking the water and continuing forward with the repairs, I think, is phenomenal, and it's in walking distance to locations where people can utilize it. So I think that's great, but my concern would be the water.
Representative Whitehouse?
So my understanding is you said that $50,000 was left over from the previous stage that went to the capital fund?
Correct.
And then you're asking for $75,000 more, and your original budget you asked for was $400,000.
Correct.
Which is fairly accurate to what you are now asking for, $375,000 total. And should this renovation not be done, a lot of the rec events are currently at
Sealy School.
Which I believe you said in the Finance Committee meeting is failing. The boiler is on its last legs, and that building may soon not be able to host it. So, so if we don't do this, then we'll need to either lose a bunch of rec capacity or spend a number of $100,000 on William Sealy. Is that correct?
That's it. William Sealy had two boilers. We're operating on one right now, and it's on its last legs. The roof needs to be replaced. We are controlling the leaks there. But maybe the manager could speak more on the sale of William Sealy School with the development.
Of course, we're still looking at options. We had a commercial developer lined up that was approved a contract with to promote that property. There's different options on there. You know, if we wanted to do just residential, we could develop that property, you know, almost overnight. But we're trying to put together a better project with mixed-use development or multi-use development, and which will take a little time. But if we end up keeping, have to keep Sealy for recreation, if we end up putting money in that, we'd lose the ability to develop this and add to our tax base, get money for the building and add to their tax base. But actually I have a meeting tomorrow on it, and we're continuing working on that property. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Whitney?
So I fully support bringing this building up to code, and I also note that the requested additional funds were sort of anticipated last year, that $300,000 weren't going to be enough to support the construction plus contingency. So I fully support that. I have one comment really, and it's really more appropriate almost for the Parks and Recs director. I met William Sealy quite a bit for my kids' programs, and we're in the gym there, which is 5 days a week, hour after hour, not me personally, but they're teaching karate and gymnastics. And that is, you know, really there needs to be a dedicated space to accommodate those two programs. In Fitch Middle School right now, what I see is that gym, which I also know is currently being used for basketball. So my comment is I really don't see a dedicated space that could support the karate programs as it is now in this location. So I hope there's planning for that. My question to you is there enough parking on this site to support not just use of the building, but the increased use to the park and recs of this building and also the fields behind it? During the fall, I see that would be quite a bit of pressure, and maybe in the spring too. Thank you.
I could answer the first one. I know I'm not the Parks and Rec director, but Mark Berry has been talking with me about the reuse of the wings B, C, and D. The main gym, full-size gym, basketball, all those sports there. But there is a smaller gym or cafetorium that is, if you look at it, it's that orange blob in the middle of the blue. That's where the cafeteria was. That is where he is looking at putting those types of programs that have mats, the judo, the karate, and everything else, where mats go down and you don't want to roll them back up again. And I know that he's looking for he's planning a dedicated space. He was looking at that one. There's a couple large classrooms there, so that he is addressing because he's the one that's people to roll the mats up and down. And the second question, now I'm getting old. Parking. Believe it or not, well. We have to go through the same zoning regulations as everyone else does. So I did ask that question to our zoning officer, which is Kevin Quinn, and the planning and zoning department, wrong town, the planning department. And we do have enough because it is staggered. It's not all at once there. Town hall is there during the day. There's not many employees, but we have that lot. We have the lot off on Depot Road. We have parking on Depot Road. Right now, from the current calculations, we have enough parking there. Now, if everyone gets there at one time, it's going to be a little bit tight.
They will. I just have a quick follow-up. That spot, that yellow spot, if I'm looking at the right one, just from my estimation, looks a bit tight for 40 kids doing karate or gymnastics. So, and will that location be ready by June 2018?
All of the blue and the light and the orange, I'm getting old, the olive all of the area our plan is to have it done by June. We have the contractor in line. We have done all of his analysis. He is holding his bid. If the funds are approved tonight, we will then ask him to submit all of his documentation, but he's ready to go, and our goal is to have it done by June so we can move the programs in a timely manner and close Sealy as quick as possible.
Representative Washington?
My question is, by just doing the minimum, is that going to cost us more in the long run? Because sometimes by just doing what you have to do, 5 years later, you're going to have to do something else, and it just costs us more money.
I am going to say, in almost to the T, to everything, no, because everything we've planned, where the sprinklers go and all the other rooms, where the sprinklers go, where the doors are, it's required by code. We did take a hard look at that because we did not want to do anything over again, that if a program moved in, or if we were going to reuse the building in some other fashion over there, that we'd have to be moving doors, sprinklers, and exit points, or egress points. So I'm very confident for the next 5 or 10 years, we are good. Will there be modifications or renovations? The Parks and Rec Director hopes so. As the programs mature, maybe funds are available through the fees to get some of the rooms painted, some of the rooms modified for the events or for the classes that he does have there. But these hard things that we did, the roof, the sprinklers, and now these code modifications, toilets, that's permanent.
I'm in full support of this project. I just wish we could tear that building down and build a state-of-the-art community center for this town, because we really do deserve it. We need a pool, you know, our kids go to Avery Point swimming, and we really need a brand-new community center. But I understand we can't afford it, so we get what we get.
Representative Melendez?
I believe the part of the school that's yellow that was called the cafeteria, I believe that's actually the kitchen, and the cafeteria is right next to it.
I stand corrected. You're correct. My memory's failing me. This is my 35th budget, so I've been here a little long. I know it's not a budget meeting, but it's been here that long. You are correct that was the serving lines, that was the kitchen and that. So the 2 rooms to the left of it, that's the area. But I'm also giving them the rooms.
Representative Pasqualini?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, only because I asked in committee how much money was saved on phase 1 or phase 2, and you didn't have a figure, and now you have 50,000 from the last phase. And I understand because it was earmarked for sprinklers and fire system, which I also remember we reduced that total amount as well when it originally went through. But why couldn't that just be why couldn't the council reappropriate that and you'd have more than enough to cover the bid? What is contingency that's not covered by the bond or the contract with the contractor that you need extra money of $36,000, which is some people's actual salary for the whole year?
Oh, absolutely. On the first question, over the years, we've really defined our capital improvement projects as clear as we can through the CIP process, through the budget process, to be very detailed. Then what we do is we bid the project and the project's closed out. The auditors and town council and the finance director are very hesitant, not very hesitant, they're very strict in that project is done, it's closed out, you need to go for a new authorization. So that money will go back, and you're right, in the committee, I did not have that number. I looked through my notes here and said, my gosh, I did have it here. So we're going to be returning about $50,000 for the second phase. The first phase, I don't know, but we did not go over budget. From my experience in the last couple of years, it is just clearer and cleaner for the auditors and everything else that you don't take the money from that money from that account goes back into your savings account, and you get a new appropriation back out again. It's just cleaner for the audit, cleaner for everyone to understand it. So that's what the case is. So 50 goes back in. I'm asking for 75 coming out. Now, on the contingency, since this is renovation work, we've done as best as we could with our architect and reviewing the stuff of everything that the contractor must do. And he bid on. So he put us a price. But part of it is in the toilet rooms, and the toilet rooms he's going to be needing to break into the walls to put in the new toilet fixtures in. We think we know where the pipes are. They're supposed to be there per plan. We think we know that the condition that the Board of Ed left them in, which is probably used to the last millimeter of space. We don't know if there's asbestos in that wall. So that's what it's used for. It's that if the contractor goes in and says, you said there was going to be a water pipe here and it's over there, there's 15 more feet of pipe I have to run, or I found asbestos, or there's something else there that needs to be done. It is not to add on to anything else. So that is the contingency. There may be other things when the code officials go through to give us the CO. They may pick up on one or two other items that they want done per the code, that it was missed on the plans or their interpretation. For the fire alarm system, it may be adding another horn in so people can hear it, because when the tests were done in this area on the plan, it looked really nice, but if you're over in that corner, you really can't hear anything, so you need to add another horn in. So it's really for stuff like that. It is not to repaint the structure or anything else. It's to be used that when the contractor goes in there and really does his work, he runs into something. And it'll probably be asbestos. The piping that he's got to tie into is worn, bad, old, and the contractor needs to be compensated for it. So, but we do watch it. The architect's there. The change orders are approved by myself. So there's a whole process of using. So that's why we have a contingency. Because the worst thing to do is have a contractor, let a contract out, and you have no contingency, and then you have to go back for more funding. It just really, it just doesn't work that way. So that's what the contingency is for, because it's a renovation work.
Representative Mello Miller.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I just had a follow-up question. So you said that William Seeley needs a roof and a boiler. So where's that money coming from?
If we would stay there, and if the town wouldn't sell that building, and you still needed a place for recreation to hold the programs, we would need to do that type of work at William Seeley School.
So are we selling William Seeley without repair work to the boiler and the roof? I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yes.
And then, I'm sorry, I have to go back to, so you're using the gym now, so right now, can we be fined? Can the town be fined for using a facility that's not in code? Like, is this gonna come back to us, the fact that you're using a space that isn't in compliance?
No, and I'm going to say no, because the code officials are I'm going to say this, they're reasonable people. It was a use that we had when the Board of Ed used it, and then when the Board of Ed also let recreation into it. It is not a major use of the building. We're not putting a bunch of town staff in there. We're not putting a bunch of kids in every room in there. So they are looking at the use, at the intensity of the use. The exits are clear. They do their inspections. The sprinklers, the fire extinguishers are good. Everything is there. It's just that it doesn't meet the letter of the code, and that's what we want to bring the rest of the building up to. So, are we in danger? No. The code officials are reasonable people. It was a continued use of that site, but to expand that use, that's where they draw the line.
And you may not be able to get the numbers tonight, but I'm curious as to how much this Wing A is costing the town just to keep and use.
We can run those numbers. It'll be based on square footage and oil use.
So, and you said oil, your fire, the.
Mostly in that area, it'd be oil use for heat, There's very little power being used in it. There's a couple exit lights that we have to keep on.
I'm just curious how much yearly this is costing us
Absolutely.
to have this as a part of the building we can't use. Thank you again.
Representative Kwiatkowski.
First of all, I just want to say I love kids. I have 2 kids, okay? But I did not support this transfer in committee because I think that the town should have reprioritized its projects to accommodate the increase in cost. If this project is a town priority, then another project should not have been funded. We can't have everything. We can't do everything. Again, after an 8.7% tax increase, there should be no additional spending. Also, I see Fitch Middle School as becoming a future never-ending CIP project. Thank you.
Representative Casper.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I keep hearing this number of 8.7% increase in taxes, and yet when I look at my numbers, it said fiscal 2017, the budget was 121.6 million, and in fiscal 2018, it was 118.9. And I think that was a 2.2% reduction in taxes. Budget equals taxes. Some people get confused with mill rate, but if everybody remembers, there was a revaluation done which reduced the grand list. But the amount of taxes raised is still that number. And the way you get the mill rate is just divide the grand list by what you need in taxes. But the actual taxes went down 2.2%.
Representative Newsom. Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would beg the RTM that maybe hold off the financial discussion on mill rates and taxes for another evening, because we could go a whole night just on that alone. To Representative Mel Miller's point about whether or not there's an issue with the ADA compliance, state regulation allows, as long as if you've got a school use, as long as you maintain some kind of educational purpose in that facility, you're allowed to continue using it without having to upgrade the codes as though the school's being used on a day-to-day basis. So that's the deal that's been with the other school buildings that have also been closed and been used for other purposes. So it's not really an issue.
Representative Sini.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Okay, so I'll ask you, what if you don't get the money? What if you don't get the money? What's going to happen? Are you going to, everything's going to cease and nothing's going to be done the rest of the year?
We don't get to use Fitch Middle School. I heat Fitch Middle School. We paid for a new roof on part of the school, we meaning the town. The town paid for a sprinkler and a fire alarm system so the building won't burn down. We just don't use the school. Programs stay at William Seeley School. If William Seeley School is sold as part of a larger project for economic development, those education programs need to go somewheres, and from what the Parks and Rec director has told me, there is no place. So those rec programs stop. If Seeley isn't sold, I'm operating on 1 boiler out of 2. That happened about a year ago when the first boiler went down. It was my decision not to put money into that boiler to fix it because we were going down the path of selling Seeley and moving to use Fitch Middle School as a rec center. So I'd be heating 1 building, Fitch Middle School, for the gymnasium and a little bit of the other areas, and I have all the sprinkler system in, and I'm heating and maintaining William Seeley School until we're thrown out of there or until it breaks. So really, I'm looking at cost avoidance, moving those programs into Seeley, from Seeley into Fitch, cold storage, Seeley. Don't heat it, take the water out, transfer the oil, do all of that good stuff, and just let it sit there until it becomes something else.
Okay. And then, so the only thing in that whole building right now is we're using just the gym. There's no other services in there. There's no training in there. There's nothing in that entire building, just in that gym.
Correct.
Okay.
Representative Streeter?
Move the question.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, sorry. Is there, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor of calling the question? Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? So, we're 32 in favor, 1 opposed, and no abstentions. I guess we should call the question, we should have the vote. So let me get my reading glasses on. So we're going to, this is not. 2-0. Thanks, sorry. So we're going to be voting on 2017-02-89, supplemental appropriation for the Town Hall complex. All in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 32 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. The motion passes. Thank you. Yes, Representative Whitehouse?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to consider 2017-0301.
Okay. Any discussion?
Who seconded that? I'm sorry. Oh, Melendez, thank you.
Yeah, and the reason for this is that, as Dr. Graner explained, there is no benefit to waiting because it's something we will have to do. We don't have a choice, but there is benefits to doing it sooner rather than later.
Any other discussion? Representative Bordelon?
I'm for allocating the funds back. I do have some concerns about some more concrete information as to exactly what this district is going to do with the money in reference to replacing where we need to as far as, because what happens here is, what I tend to see or have seen is we allocate funds and then the services aren't always rendered in the way in which, coming forward, we don't even know, we didn't get the answers today as to why we're an alliance district. Exactly, he's got to get back to us. So I'd like, I guess, if we want to move this forward, more discussion. I think there's some answered questions here. We are going back to the same exact funding as last year, 2017, with an additional 600 coming from the state that we weren't expecting because we thought we weren't going to get any money for being part of an alliance district. You have a $400,000 grant coming in. Money's flying everywhere, which is 400,000, whatever.
4 million.
4 million, I'm sorry. I apologize.
So can I just interject? We're really voting on whether to suspend the rules, and maybe we should wait till we have done that to get into the meat of the motion.
I have trouble with suspending them to, I guess my thing would be I have trouble suspending them because we were not presented with a lot of information today. That would be my...
You have to use a mic because I can't hear you.
Two-thirds.
Yeah, it's 2/3 of the vote to suspend the rules. Sorry. So if there's discussion on suspending the rules, I'm willing to hear from Representative Katowski.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to wait because I don't feel like I have enough information to vote on this. I agree with Representative Bordelon.
Any other discussion? Representative Casper?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think we have sufficient information as to the reasons to do this. I think we are going to have to do it. If we don't, we're going to be penalized 2x next year. And I mean, we're not voting on how it's going to be spent. We're only making the money there so that we don't lose money next year. And I think it's as simple as that.
Representative Bordelon?
Point of order, Madam Moderator.
Yes.
The motion to suspend the rules is a non-debatable motion.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Scott.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. All in favor
It'll
of
take
suspending
20. It'll take 22 votes.
Yeah. And
we'll do a If I can do a roll call, please.
Okay. We'll have a roll call vote then. Thank you.
Say yes or no when I call your name. This is to suspend the rules to discuss motion item 2017-0301. Okay. Adams?
No.
Bauer?
No.
Bordelon?
Yes.
You want to suspend the rules?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right. Casper?
Yes.
Chase?
No.
Sini? Doyle? Frickman?
Yes.
Gustafson?
Yes.
Hanscom?
No.
Gutowski?
No.
Marshall?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. Newsom?
No.
Oliver?
Yes.
Pasqualini?
No.
Perry?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Quinn?
No.
Richards? Stanford?
No.
Streeter?
Yes.
Strode?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Washington? Wells?
Yes.
Whitehouse?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
Ebbin?
Yes.
22 yes, 11 no.
22 yes and 11 no. The motion passes.
Yeah. That was right on the line.
So, we have had a motion to suspend the rules, but we need to get a motion to get this started, or we can have discussion.
There you go.
Representative Whitehouse? Can you say the,
You need me to read the whole motion?
yes, please.
Okay. Supplemental appropriation to the Board of Education. Resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation to Board of Education. Whereas the Board of Education FYE 2018 appropriation was reduced due to proposed cuts to the state education cost-sharing grant, and whereas Groton was designated as an Alliance District by the State Department of Education as of July 1st, 2017, and this designation continues for 5 years to FYE 2022, and whereas the Alliance District designation requires that education funding cannot be reduced for fiscal years ending June 30th, 2018 and June 30th, 2019, and whereas Connecticut State Department of Education has determined the 2017-2018 minimum budget requirement, MBR, calculation is the FYE 2017 budget appropriation of $76,468,239. Now therefore be it resolved that $1,568,239 is appropriated from the general fund unassigned balance to the Board of Education Function 1080 to meet the minimum budget requirement, MBR, and referred to the RTM for approval.
Melendez. Time starts.
All right. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just back to what I was talking about before, where I realized I was speaking out of turn. My problem is not with the money going to the education. My concern is how the money is being spent. We can give any company, any agency a ton of money and say, yeah, I'm fully supportive of this, but how are they utilizing it is my concern. And I guess I just would like more concrete examples about how we're not going to get to this point again, instead of showing up at the budget season like last year where, remedial straight down the row. I remember standing up at that podium and pleading to restore. And now here we are almost a year later, and it's urgent that we restore these funds when children have been without services since the start of school, and we were lacking services. Before they cut services, we were already lacking services. So being now in the bottom 33, and you're going to say, oh, it's the attendance, it's this, it's that, it's not as bad, out of 150-something possible schools in our district, that doesn't look that great. I just would like, to show up and say exactly why we're an Alliance District, what we're doing to change these things, and how we're going to move forward and make sure that we, Groton, people are talking about, you want to fund the schools because you want, for economic development, you want people to come here, so we better fund it. And someone said, well, we better fund it because we're going to have to anyway. Well, that's the sad part, because we're worried about the penalty. But the concern is, by refunding that, making sure not just what the state's going to hold you to. I'm eliminating that 600 and the other money. You're going back to the same amount of money as last year, and a school has closed. By putting this funding back, you have more than last year, technically, almost, or close to meeting it from last year. If we go back, if we're putting the funds back to the original stated amount. We close the school, there should be some extra money floating around. Do you have a fund balance, or where else is this? I mean, I went to the Board of Ed meeting and I looked at your financial, and it's we're negative in para money, we're negative here, but we're hiring there. We hired a communication coordinator, we hired an assistant transportation coordinator. You're still hiring while you were cutting remedial support services in this district. So as I want to put the money back, because I'm pleading that this district is going to take care of its most vulnerable students, which is why we're part of the Alliance District, is what it's coming out on paper, is how do we not get here again? How do we move forward in making sure that the children are properly being taken care of? At the high school, our class sizes in the upper classes, in the International Baccalaureate, it's 10, some classes 6, 11, and on the lower levels, we're 23 deep, 25 deep at the high school. Okay. Recently, there was a situation where children were getting photocopied novels sent home because they did not have enough novels, books to read in your lower English classes at Fitch High School. We're not talking about the International Baccalaureate program or any other programs. I am talking about your college prep, which you guys call your entry-level class now because general is no longer there. Children were reading over 100 pages from a literacy novel because schools were not prepared and did not have enough novels to pass out to every student. So that's a great example of how funds from last year weren't properly spent. So I just, once again, why I joined the RTM is because of the education. And I just hope that, as you keep hiring communication coordinator, what are they communicating? What is the assistant transportation coordinator doing? And there's nothing against them directly. It's the mere numbers that I'm seeing. You bought a system to help with directing how buses would flow, but then you also hired somebody else on top of the technology. I'm just seeing a lot of excessive spending. And I'm not seeing the spending on the lower level with the children in the areas that are the hardest hit with the lowest numbers on their test scores.
Thank you. Did you want to respond, Superintendent?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Well, not knowing this was going to come up tonight, I didn't bring the board's list of how they would propose. And the board, I want to be clear, the board, because the money was not appropriated yet, the board has not allocated this money. But I'll just tell you what my recommendation is, which I think will, I hope will be acted upon. The first thing is we currently, because of a shortfall, remember, the budget was cut by $2.85 million. So we had to make some significant adjustments. And as I said, the closing of the elementary school was only 1.3 of that. So there's 1.5 that we had to cut. Almost immediately, we realized that our paraprofessional account was way underfunded, like to the tune of $600,000. When we receive children who require special education services, those are written into their educational plans of the children. So right off the bat, we knew we were in trouble. In fact, from September on, we have had a significant deficit, about a $750,000 deficit. And that is one of the reasons why, of course, we didn't, I froze the budget in September, which is one of the reasons, of course, why we don't have the books that you were referring to. But here's what the board, I believe, well, these are my recommendations, that we would fully fund the para account to the tune of about overall, about $750,000. We would hire a literacy specialist, a math specialist, a special ed teacher. All of these things were cut from the budget. Half-time special education teacher at elementary school, a literacy specialist that is now splitting between 2 elementary schools. We cut $136,000 of side budgets, meaning the money that the schools use for everything from paper and pencils to photocopy equipment. I took 15% off the top of that. That was that is $136,000. So of course, the $1.5 million would allow us to fill that hole. There are district-wide field trips. All the second graders go to the aquarium. All the third graders go to the seaport. And I think in the past, some schools went and some schools didn't, so the board now has had a program that's $49,000. There's educational software that I mentioned for $53,000. We have a textbook account that we want to fully fund, and we had the high school, middle school, and several elementary teachers have had, over the last 3 years, have had their computers upgraded. And we were hoping this year, but it got cut, to provide laptop computers for the elementary teachers. So that would be funded. So all of that comes to $1,568,239. So if we got the money, the board has actually only identified the personnel, which I just gave, and I think I have virtually everyone. And then what they said was, we will take a look at, they will take a look at the field trips, the software, the site budgets, and all that, all those elements. But as I say, I wasn't, I greatly appreciate the consideration. If we could get it, the board would vote immediately, I know, and would move forward, and we would make these appointments. Frankly, I would make these appointments. If this body approves it, I'll make the appointments tomorrow, and just inform the board that because they did make the personnel appointments. They did vote on the personnel appointments.
Just the other part of my question that you can answer: what are you going to do in the future? Because under other Board of Eds, being Beverly Washington, as I watched grow up when I was at Fitch High School and went through the system here, they weren't cutting remedial support. Actually, they were padding it and improving it, and that's why we were where we were. We were not part of an alliance district.
Right.
So my question is, what are we going to do as a district when we come to this fork in that road again, where we're running out of money, but yet we're hiring staff, but you're saying we're cutting remedial support? How in a district to a parent, how is that okay? And what are you going to do when you're faced with this again? That's what I want to hear, because that shouldn't be the first on your cutting block.
Well, no, I wouldn't want the RTM to think that we cut all the remedial support. We have tutors, we have an entire special education department, and we have 196 paraprofessionals that provide remedial support. That's really the foundation. And when I saw that account was in big trouble, you know, that frankly would be one of the last things that I would cut. But had it not been for this, I knew we had this deficit in the fall. We would have had to cut services, and cutting $750,000 of services would have been devastating. But you know, I want to make it clear that we have many remedial services in place. And some of the things that we're restoring, that were cut, were certainly not remedial. The field trips and the software and the site budgets and everything, those are not remedial.
What are you going to do differently? I guess you still haven't answered my question. That's why I'm going to keep, how are you going to, in future, handle this differently as a district? So that we don't become an alliance district based on the lack of, when you speak of the paras, that's a small body of students, but the specialists, the reading and math support that get the children up in the lower grades.
Point of order, Madam Moderator.
Are important.
Please, let's retain our comments to one question. I'm trying to cycle through with at least one person per question. And
We have a question on the floor. The discussion is pertinent to whether or not we should spend this money. The Board of Ed meeting is the place to hammer out all of these little things. The superintendent can spend the money however he sees fit per state statute. We're not here to dictate what he spends the money on. The question before the body is, do we have to bring the budget up to the minimum budget requirement? And the answer, according to the superintendent, is yes.
thank you,
But I feel like I was
I have a few other people.
I feel like I was cut off because my only question was, what are we going to do different? That's all I was asking. I'm voting on restoring funds of money that was cut, which is pertaining to the situation. And my question simply was, how are we going to do this differently when we're at the same fork in the road? And that's what I was looking to get answered. And it was pertaining to the cuts of the restoring the money.
Representative Pasqualini?
Yes,
Point of order, Madam Moderator. I was mistaken. I think I was next.
No, I have a list and you weren't, so thank you.
We're watching.
I'm trying to be on top of it.
we good?
You're good.
All right. What was last year's budget figure? It wasn't below the MBR, was it? Did we go below the MBR?
We went to the MBR.
Okay. So,
It's the number we were talking about, 76,468.
so asking for the 1.5 is over the MBR?
No, that will bring us back to that number. Right now, we're 74.9. We're $1,568,239 below last year's MBR.
Okay. And can we tell them we don't want to be the Alliance District? That thank you, but no thank you?
No.
Well, if they're not going to give you the $600 to...
Well, they are giving us the
600
for this year.
But then we don't know afterwards, so the taxpayers will be stuck with whatever you set up.
No.
And we can't go any
You have a
further.
microphone there.
Yeah.
Plus, we're stuck with the MBR,
Right.
can't do anything with it either.
The way we're going to spend the money, the $600,000, is to build capacity. We're not going to be putting money into personnel, so we're not going to be, stuck with that. It's a good point, and we're going to avoid that. And the State Department told us to avoid that. Don't put all the money into, or not put a large amount of money into personnel, because then next year we're going to face that same problem. What we're going to try to do is put a fair amount of money into software, which we will own, a fair amount of money into professional development, so that we increase the capacity of our teaching staff.
Representative Marshall?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would ask that as the RTM this evening, we put this to vote and let that decide how this concludes this evening. If it does not pass, then we'll have plenty of time to go to committee. But I would like to see us vote now. It's getting close to 11. So
I think he's asking to move the question.
I'm asking to move the question so that someone can make a motion to vote.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, who seconded the motion to move? Adams, okay.
If this fails, it's dead, correct?
No.
Okay, it can still just go to the committee.
All right, there's a motion on the floor, it's not debatable. All in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
2, 3. 2 through 3? Okay, Whitney,
And me.
Crickman, and Ebbin. We have 30, 32.
Any abstentions?
Oh, you said no, 2? Okay. Yeah, 3. 4 opposed. Okay. White House.
It was Whitney, Frickman,
White House.
Ebbin.
Yep. Okay. 32. Just, no, so. We have 31 people here. God bless me, see, I'm too tired. Sorry. 2 people left.
27 in favor, 4 opposed.
Right.
27 in favor, 4 opposed. The motion carries. So now we have a motion on the floor, and we're going to vote on it. So we're voting on motion 2017-0301, resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation to the Board of Education.
Roll call.
And I think we're going to do this as a roll call vote. And all in favor, oh, Betsy will take it away.
You say yes or no when I call your name. Adams? Bauer? Bauer? No, she's right here. A yes or no, Representative Bauer? Representative Bauer? Yes. Yes or no for the question?
Yes.
Bordelon?
Yes.
Representative, yes. Casper?
Yes.
Chase?
Yes.
Sini? Doyle?
Yes.
Frickman?
Yes.
Gustafson?
Yes.
Hanscom?
Yes.
Marshall?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Mello Miller?
Yes.
Merritt?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Newsom?
Yes.
Oliver?
Yes.
Pasqualini?
Yes.
Perry?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Quinn?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Stanford?
Yes.
Streeter?
Yes.
Strode?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Whitehouse?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
And Ebbin.
Yes.
31 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions.
The motion passes, 31 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. So that was long, and so we still have a few items on our agenda. However, there's, the next item is actually budget discussion, but I don't believe there is any. And then the next one is other business. Are there any comments on other business? No?
Pasqualini made a motion to adjourn.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in February.